Noon conference. Our session will begin in 2 minutes. Please move to your seats and bring your conversations to a close. This is your 2-minute warning before we begin our afternoon session. One of the privileges of belonging to the Texas Annual Conference is the relationship we have with our institutions. Institutions are organized ways of accomplishing your mission. Over 100 years ago, the Texas Annual Conference was instrumental in founding a hospital in Houston. As your bishop, I serve ex officio on the board, as do a number of other United Methodist clergy and leaders. And over the course of the pandemic, it has just been an incredible privilege to watch the ways in which Dr. Mark Boom has led the hospital to respond aggressively and safely and proactively and with great leadership. The tagline for the hospital of leading medicine has certainly been borne out. But Mark personally has been active in public relations, both in our church vehicles, media, as well as in national media. And as a board member, I've just been incredibly proud of the leadership he has given for the entire country, let alone the hospital of which he is president and CEO. We've invited Mark to come and present to us and give us an update upon how things are going. And I want to indicate to you that we're also grateful, Mark, for the donation of face masks so that everybody who wants a face mask has a high-quality face mask here at this conference session. So thank you for the many ways in which you and the hospital have partnered with the people of the Texas Annual Conference. Mark, we hear you gladly.
Thank you, Bishop, and it is a delight and privilege to be here again. It seems like a million years since I've stood in front of you in this room. It's great to see everybody the last couple of years, of course, giving you updates virtually. And I'm going to talk today about how things are going at Houston Methodist, and we'll conclude my remarks with a little bit of discussion, as I know you all are having many difficult discussions yourselves right now. But first, I want to go through some of the accomplishments for Houston Methodist. Just to remind you, we are a very, very large system now, born out of this small little hospital in 1919 that then the Methodist Episcopal Church founded on the last day of 1919. We're now 103 years old. We have 28 28,000 plus employees, probably 30,000 by year end, thousands of physicians who work with us, and we care for extraordinary numbers of individuals, and that is something we're very, very proud of. Last year when I was talking to you, this is kind of where things were with COVID. And it's hard to have worked in a hospital these last couple of years without not having to give out some updates around COVID and how the impact that's had and what we've been able to achieve, as was alluded to by Bishop Jones. And thank you, Bishop, for those very kind words. This was last year. The line here, if you just look at the blue, is how many patients are in our hospital. So we were kind of at a quiet moment then, and we've been through one heck of a lot since that time. In fact, last summer's surge was probably the most difficult for the people who work at Houston Methodist and across our community in healthcare, but this winter was no picnic either, let me tell you. And we're really in a recovery mode for many of those individuals. I'll talk to you about that a little later. Unfortunately, this is 5 days old. You see 84 people in the hospital bed. We peaked at around 800 some in a hospital bed across our system. We're now up to 100. It is coming back up. I don't believe it's going to shoot back up like we've seen, but we are at a time where there's a lot more community transmission. So we've been telling people it is time, if you are more vulnerable, to start really rethinking your activities and be a little more careful again, as we will see some increased infections this summer. And if you have not yet had your third dose, your booster, get boosted. If you haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated, please. And if you haven't had a second dose and you're above age 50 or have health issues and are 5 months past your last booster, I would strongly urge you to do so. You'll probably need one again in the fall before we face a winter surge. Through this all, we have focused, across the board, not just on COVID. In fact, we've executed, I think, extremely well on our vision of unparalleled safety, quality service, and innovation as an institution. And I always tell our people, look, focus on those fundamentals, because that's what really matters. When you do that, you're connecting with people, you're healing people, you're making a difference in their lives. But sometimes it's also nice to celebrate the awards that follow. And if you do those things, the awards do follow. And in fact, we've received really huge numbers of awards. Very notably, number 16 in U.S. News and World Report, best hospitals for our main campus. Every single one of our hospitals in the big balanced benchmark we look across the country in the top 10% of outcomes, which we're very proud of, as well as many other awards as well. And when I talk to our team, I talk to our board, I talk to our physicians and others about, well, how did we pull that off? How is it that the institution's so successful? And there's really two things. The first of them is so important it bears repeating, and that's culture, culture, culture. And we have really focused on our basis in faith, our embracing of all people as sacred people of worth and value. Our values, our iCare values, integrity, compassion, accountability, respect, and excellence, and all that really drives for our system. The second aspect of that is a relentlessly consistent and sustained focus. So you can go back now. This is imagery we've used for 20 years, and while the imagery changes, really what we're talking about, putting the patient at the center, putting the patient first, driving excellence and that unparalleled safety, quality, service, and innovation, never accepting anything less than the best, and never being satisfied that we're good enough today so that we can get better and better tomorrow. And we've used this and been successful with this, and actually really begun to be known for this nationally. This is actually an image of a publication that happened in the New England Journal of Medicine Catalyst back in December, and very excited that the team was able to share many of those best practices. Now, I want to talk about a few things that have happened that have been quite of note. If you think about last year, this time, we were in the midst of some pretty significant discussions societally around the COVID vaccine. And we have taken a very data-driven, apolitical approach and been crystal clear that the science supports these vaccines. In fact, the reason you're all here today able to interact the way we're interacting today is because of the vaccines. Without those, we would not have made the progress we have made so far. They're not perfect. Exactly. Thank you for that in the back there. And we've given well over 1.1 million vaccines. I think we're in the top couple percent of institutions anywhere in the country, first in Texas in terms of leaning in and vaccinating the public and getting people vaccinated. And as you all know, we were in this big dialogue last year because we were in the midst of having been the first hospital system to mandate the COVID vaccine for the people who work there, because we see our sacred obligation to care for patients and to keep patients safe. And we can't possibly live with ourselves as healthcare professionals if we somehow didn't do everything we could do to protect them. And in fact, I would keep slides, and each of those is an image of the slides we'd add to as system after system after system after system followed us, and ultimately culminating this fall in this becoming really the law of the land for all hospitals. And I'm very, very proud of the tenacity, the fortitude that was shown by our leadership in doing this. People often ask me, was it a hard decision? I tell them it wasn't hard at all. The only difficult was when, not if. Because we followed who we are as an institution and know what we are about in putting patients at the center. And just like I showed you with the high reliability data, we've actually published on this. This is actually Harvard Business Review. You can actually see a New England Journal of Medicine Catalyst article as well. And so been able to share our experience along the way. I will tell you, I can't go to a national meeting now in healthcare without them, because I'm there, introducing me as leading the hospital system that made the difference for the country, and among hospital leaders across the country, really very proud of what our team was able to accomplish. Thank you. Thank you very much. So hopefully we're in a point where COVID's going to be much more endemic. I wish it would just go away. It's not going to just go away, but hopefully it stays more endemic. I tell people, well, we can't totally predict this. If a really bad, hairy variant shows up, it took 3 weeks back, this November for it to show up here. Right now, we sort of have a string of sort of less significant variants, and we have some waning immunity for people who aren't necessarily getting boosted or for people who've been sick. And so we're going to see some periodic surges. I hope and pray nothing like we've seen before. But as I alluded to, it's been a tough time to be a hospital employee, to be a nurse, to be a physician, to be a respiratory therapist, et cetera, and doing all of that frontline work. And what I tell our team is, look, COVID is a reason sometimes for some way things are, but it's never going to be our excuse. But what I also tell our people is that it would be completely naive not to acknowledge the human toll this has had, and the fact that this has created difficulty. I liken it to being a prize fighter in a multi-round fight. And every one of those surges, you're in the ring, right? Taking a bunch of blows, and somebody hits you in the gut and you lose your breath, and then somebody, gives you a left or right hook, and you maybe get your bell rung a little bit, right? And then you sit down and you get a little breather, and then you start all over again. That's what it's been like. But the difference is when you finish as a prize fighter, you don't go prize fight 2 nights later. You don't go prize fight a week later, right? They take a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months off. And our people have just had to get right back up there because, of course, all the other things to care for and other issues that are out there never stop. And so we've focused on that throughout. And so, again, very proud of them. And we've done a lot to help them recover, to help them recuperate, to tend to, frankly, psychological issues, psychiatric issues, spiritual issues, and many others. Our chaplains have been absolutely phenomenal in that, as have all of our psychiatrists, psychologists, many others as we've done this. And the churches have been tremendous as well. Somewhere I lost my slide here. I don't know what happened to it. It fell out of the deck. But I had a wonderful set of images of all of the churches who have given to us, donated, brought food in, helped our teams, and really propped us up. And I can't say thank you strongly enough for the palpable support we have felt from the entire conference and from specific churches and others. It really means a great deal to our teams. One of the things I'm really proud of is how innovative our teams have become throughout COVID. And I just want to talk a little bit about spiritual care innovation, because it really pushed us, especially early on, to become innovative. And one of the things we've been working on is putting iPads in every single patient room for many, many things. You'll see countless layers of this and how that will be utilized. But one of the ways we've used it, and you can see it with Chaplain Bob Kidd, who is our director across the system of spiritual care. He reports up to Charles Milliken. And you can see that's actually an iPad screen. Each of those blue bars there, buttons, is one of our hospitals that you can click on. You can actually see prayers, you can request a prayer, you can request a chaplain's visit. And actually what you see on the bottom right there is also the fact that you can see on-demand prayers and on-demand reflections in your religion. So we have, I think, 22 of these. We have 18 different faiths represented in all of these that you see there, and it's very exciting. We do that in Spanish and other languages as well. One of the things I'm really proud of this year has been all that we've done to lean in and care for the underserved. We still in Texas have a huge number of underserved, much more than most states. We've been partnering with a number of community organizations. Actually, we do over $1 billion a year in community benefit. One of the things we did, our board did this last year, the Bishop was a big part of that, is give an initial $50 million. There's actually another $50 million set aside. And we're giving this to Legacy Clinic, and we're actually building them 2 new sites to serve people in parts of Houston that are completely underserved. They'll build what's called a federally qualified health center, which then draws down some federal dollars, so it becomes a self-sustainable enterprise. We'll give them both the construction, the building, the land, and we actually will fund the first few years as they get up and running, and hopefully a couple more of these to come in the not-too-distant future. So very pleased with that as well. Thank you. Truly watching God at work as we're able to accomplish that. And many other exciting things happening in terms of growth and construction, a new hospital on the northwest side of town, a big new building in the Texas Medical Center. But before I move on, I want to finish up and reflect on us, both as an academic institution, then I want to say a few more things to you. Part of our culture is that we are an academic institution. We drive the science of tomorrow, the medicine of tomorrow. When you talk about some of the decisions we've made here that I just talked about, it was all scientifically and medically based. But you're going to be hard-pressed to find an institution anywhere that intermeshes that as well as Houston Methodist does with faith and spirituality and care for the whole person. And so very proud of that academic enterprise as well, and I wanted to make that point. So with that, I want to just reflect on a couple things. As you can see, things are going very well at Houston Methodist. Our spiritual care of our patients is alive and well, and indeed, I think it's thriving as we continue to expand to some even more segments of our community. We have over 28,000 employees. We have thousands of physicians. We care for upwards of 1.5 million individuals every single year in our community and across the world. Those individuals meet literally every definition of diversity. They represent every race, every ethnicity, every faith tradition, every generation, virtually every single country of origin on the planet, as well as diversity in sexual orientation and gender identity. In short, we embrace every single person, whether our employee, whether community members, whether patients, as a person of sacred worth and value. Now, we're obviously aware that churches within the Texas Annual Conference, as well as within the United Methodist Church, are currently wrestling with some complex issues. I want to point out those are church issues. They are not Houston Methodist issues. We don't perform ordination of ministers. We don't perform marriages. We provide health care and have a sacred obligation to care for every single human being. So, thank you. But although the issues you're wrestling with are not Houston Methodist issues, the discussions have consequences for Houston Methodist. So therefore, I want you to know I'm working very closely with our board of directors to understand the issues and to work collaboratively and collegially with the Texas Annual Conference to protect and enhance Houston Methodist's ability to care for our patients. We have several key philosophies and principles that we will adhere to as we engage in these discussions. We tremendously value, as I said, the fact that we are a faith-based institution with a close relationship to the United Methodist Church, to the Texas Annual Conference as a whole, and to the churches that make up the Texas Annual Conference. We seek to continue to strengthen those relationships, and we will embrace what I will refer to as a quote-unquote big tent approach to the churches represented here today. However, we cannot have our healthcare mission entangled in or impacted negatively by discussions and decisions that are occurring within the conference or its churches. So therefore, we will work within our own board and in discussions with leaders that are representing the rich diversity of the Texas Annual Conference to ensure the future success of Houston Methodist. Always, just as you've seen with everything else here, beginning with the needs of our patients at the center of every decision that we make. We'll do so recognizing we can't predict what steps will be taken within the churches of the Texas Annual Conference or across the United Methodist Church now, later this year, or in 2024 and beyond. Thus, we will seek flexibility and predictability for Houston Methodist while maintaining our strong ties to all of you. In doing so, we will ensure that each year for decades to come, when the CEO of Houston Methodist comes here to report on the continued progress of the institution, all of you hopefully will be delighted and proud to see the positive impact of Houston Methodist on the community. Thank you very much for having me here today. God bless each one of you.
The Texas Annual Conference also has a strong covenant relationship with our camp near Palestine. Josh Pulver became the president of Lakeview Methodist Conference Center, and then pandemic hit. So I don't think he's actually addressed our conference in person, and we wanted to be sure to give him an opportunity to update you. Lakeview has just celebrated its 75th anniversary, and Josh is doing an excellent job at navigating through the pandemic and leading Lakeview into its next 75 years. Josh, welcome.
And as Josh prepares to address the group, I do want to remind everyone that we do want to thank Mark Boone for the mask, as mentioned earlier. We do have a mask-only section in the auditorium here, and so we ask people, if you would, to go ahead and observe that. If you're in that section, go ahead and put your mask on. It's the front section over here on the right. And if you're not comfortable wearing a mask and you want to sit in one of the mask optional sections, you're welcome to do that. But let's please keep that safe for all of our folks that have the need to wear a mask at this time. So thank you for that. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Truly, yes, we praise the Lord, and I bring you greetings from Lakeview Methodist Conference Center. I'm truly excited to see your smiling faces. Last year was a bit odd for me. I'm used to talking to myself, but not usually in an empty room with the bishop and cabinet watching. It was definitely interesting and more nerve-wracking than seeing all of your faces today, so it truly is an honor to be here, standing before you. There's a lot of excitement building, I think, with Lakeview as we open back up from the pandemic, and I'm here today to share some of that with you. But first, wanted to take a moment to recognize a very special woman that Lakeview lost a year ago. If you've been to Lakeview in the last 30 years, you know Maz. Mazeline Walker was a very important part of Lakeview with our gift shop, also as a United Methodist clergy spouse. Many of you know her and her family from their years of service in the United Methodist Conference. And I just wanted to take a moment and recognize Maz for the special place she helped Lakeview become and be, and the special place she has in all of our hearts. So thank you. As Bishop Jones said, we are celebrating 75 years of ministry at Lakeview this year. That's an amazing accomplishment, and it's because of our relationship with you all and you all continuing to use Lakeview. Hopefully, you all received an invitation to our event on April 2nd. If you didn't, it either went to your spam folder, we've been having that happen a lot lately, or we don't have a current email address for you. If you'd like to update your email address, go to iheartlakeview.org and click on Stay in Touch. I promise we won't send you spam, but check your spam folders. If you were not able to attend the celebration, you missed a powerful worship service featuring Bishop Scott Jones, Bishop Robert Hayes, and Reverend Karen Jones leading that time. We also had a wonderful worship service on Sunday morning led by Reverend Charles Anderson. The worship service was followed by a concert by Garrett Mosier, Austin French, and Micah Tyler. I hope you'll enjoy a little video that we've put together just showing you some of the excitement that happened that day. It's
Located on over 1,300 acres and capable of hosting over 1,300 people, Lakeview is blessed with the ability to host groups of various sizes and multiple groups at the same time. Our proximity to Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Waco, Austin, and Tyler make it feasible for our campers and guests to travel to Lakeview for week-long, weekend, or weekday events. Since the 1800s, camps have been a valuable part of our world. Founded in 1947, Lakeview is celebrating 75 years of transforming lives for Jesus Christ.
Sorry, that's the wrong video, so I didn't have a chance to introduce that video. I apologize. Do we have the other video to be able to run? There we go.
So that we can continue to impact lives here at Lakeview. That's why we're here. That's our mission.
What a privilege it is to share in this celebration. Amen?
But today we render to you our celebration of Thanksgiving from the deepest depths of our hearts for this place that we call Lakeview.
We call that place Bethel.
There's a God who loves you so much that he sent his best to die on the cross. His only son, Jesus Christ, laid upon the cross for you, taking every sin you've ever committed or will commit, and he died for your redemption.
All right, right side, how do you feel?
But here's the truth. I did not come here to sell you anything. If I'm being 100% honest with you, I didn't come here to sing songs. I came here because when I was 10 years old, the gospel of Jesus changed my life forever. And it's because of the change that he made in my life that day that called me out to try and see if we can see that change happen in somebody else.
Thank you all so much. God bless you. Be safe going home. And we'll see you soon.
As you can see, it was a wonderful day. That day is truly an example of God working in powerful and mysterious ways. We had tried for 8 months to get in touch with Micah Tyler and his agents, and just failed attempt after failed attempt. And finally, they reached back out to us, and it made it happen. So it was truly great. We're trying to make some changes around Lakeview. We're trying to upgrade our facilities and make some fun things for you all to see when you come out. One of the most visible changes this year is the addition of our Lakeview mural. Located on the Barton Family Center in the middle of camp, this provides you or your group an awesome photo opportunity as you visit Lakeview for years to come. Adding hashtag Lakeview Mural to your post will help you share your memory on social media and collaborate those with others who've done the same thing. Hello, my name is Joshua Daniel, also known as Jehovah Saves, and God is my judge. Our true identity is found in God, and our summer camp curriculum this year will help by discussing people in the Bible that found their true identity after an encounter with Christ. We have 4 sessions of resident camp and 1 session of day camp this year. We hosted day camp in 2021 for the first time, and it was a huge hit. One request we do have for you all this year, last year, many of you might remember, we asked you to not visit Lakeview. With the COVID guidelines that we had in place last year, we thought it very important to protect all of the campers and the adults and protect you, so we asked you to not come to camp. We're not asking that this year. But we are asking, if you plan to come and visit Lakeview, if you're not going to be part of the camp, we need you to let us know in advance, please. With ongoing safety issues in our world, it is more and more difficult for us to provide a safe place and to ensure the parents that their children are in safe hands while they're at Lakeview when we don't know who's coming on site. So please, I'm asking you, personally, if you're coming to Lakeview to visit for any reason and you're not there for the entire week, let us know. We'll be glad for you to come by the office, check in, we'll give you a guest badge, and then you'll be able to go. But we need to make sure that all of our visitors are safe sanctuary screened and background checked. And that's for the safety of our campers, and it also helps you out at the same time. So please help us respect that. If our staff see anyone without a badge and a lanyard, they will ask you to come to the office and check in. And at that point, if that's still not done, then we will ask you to leave the property at that time. That is for the safety of our campers, and we ask for your help with that this year. Thank you. I'm glad you clapped. The cost for camp is remaining the same this year, but I need to warn you. The cost of operating continues to climb. We also must increase the amount we charge campers and guests at Lakeview. Right now, we struggle to hire staff due to the rising wages offered by local businesses. We provide a wonderful experience for our staff, but our lower pay scale makes it extremely difficult to attract quality staff. The drastic increase in operating expenses also creates a strong demand for Lakeview to increase our rates as we move forward. This summer, we still need to hire 23 more staff just for the kitchen at Lakeview, and that's so we can have camp next week. So it's a true problem. We've done a bonus this year. If staff come in and work for the entire summer, they can earn up to a $1,000 bonus to come and work at Lakeview. So as you can see, times are getting tough for us to find employees. What has now become a tradition for many families, Labor Day is the perfect time for families to come together at Lakeview and enjoy the feel of camp while growing together through worship, fellowship, and fun. We hope you'll help spread the word for you and your church families to join us this year at Family Camp. Lakeview's midwinter this year was a huge success with over 130 in attendance. Campers had a taste of summer camp mixed with some first-time experiences that will remain midwinter traditions. While we have a lot of fun, helping our campers and guests experience God in a new way is our main goal. Confirmation Camp continued to be a wonderful weekend filled with worship, fellowship, and lessons on John Wesley and our United Methodist doctrine. New groups like Soulwell Ministries continue to find Lakeview a wonderful place to hold their spiritual weekends. Soulwell has committed to at least 12 retreats each year at Lakeview and have also helped connect us with other ministries that have found Lakeview to be a good place to call home. The sun is not setting on Lakeview. With 75 years of ministry, we believe God has great things in store for Lakeview and want to share a video showing you just some of what we have planned.
Located on over 1,300 acres and capable of hosting over 1,300 people, Lakeview is blessed with the ability to host groups of various sizes and multiple groups at the same time. Our proximity to Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Waco, Austin, and Tyler make it feasible for our campers and guests to travel to Lakeview for week-long, weekend, or weekday events. Since the 1800s, camps have been a valuable part of our world. Founded in 1947, Lakeview is celebrating 75 years of transforming lives for Jesus Christ. Our purpose has not been altered, and we continue to find new ways to help people experience God while visiting these holy grounds. God has utilized Lakeview in many different ways over the years. From summer camps, adult retreats, and family reunions, countless people have experienced God in a new and unmatched way that cannot be recreated anywhere else. God planted a seed in the early 1940s, and faithful disciples carried out God's plan for that seed to become what we have today. We, who have been called to Lakeview, have faith that we are continuing to follow God's plan as we pray and carry out the vision that has been given to us. As you can see in the Lakeview plan, we plan to renovate, upgrade, and build new. Our main priority is to provide new lodging, meeting spaces, and programming as we expand the types of groups we are able to reach and the activities available to them while on site. We also plan to improve our infrastructure, upgrade existing facilities, and continue providing new, natural experiences in God's creation. To give you a glimpse, we'd like to show you the new facilities we have planned at Lakeview. First is a new 80-room hotel-style lodge. This two-story conference center will sleep up to 320 people and allow multiple groups at the same time. With one large meeting space, 8 breakout rooms, a fitness room, and other indoor spaces, the new lodge will completely change Lakeview's ability to attract adult groups and conferences. As you can see, this amazing facility will be the best Lakeview has to offer, with comfortable private rooms that provide flexibility and space to get away. The building's location will provide privacy from other groups while creating an environment perfect for any occasion. The views from the private rooms, meeting spaces, balconies, and screened-in patios will draw crowds as the day comes to an end and guests gather to witness God's glorious East Texas sunsets. Our first and most critical need in programming is a new adventure park. Can't you imagine flying across the lake on one of our new zip lines? Our current challenge course has helped us impact lives for over 20 years, but is nearing the end of its lifespan. As we look to attract new groups and increase activities for our current groups, this adventure park will play a major role with its numerous elements and flexibility. With a capacity near 60 people at one time, this course will drastically change our ability to minister, as it will include elements for people of all abilities and comfort levels. As you know, East Texas summers are extremely hot, and we often have to create indoor activities for our campers due to the extreme temperatures. Our new activity center will allow just that, with 2 indoor basketball courts, a large game room, a new snack shack with interior and exterior serving lines, and new meeting spaces to replace the ones we can no longer use. The outside will feature a large covered patio facing the Central Plaza, allowing our campers and guests the opportunity to gather together regardless of weather conditions. Last but certainly not least is the new Welcome Center. This incredible new centerpiece of Lakeview will include a large atrium, new meeting spaces, a large gift shop, the welcome desk, a sitting area, staff storm shelter, and staff offices on the second floor overlooking the atrium. This will welcome each camper and guest as they come to Lakeview, providing a center for information and gathering. The Welcome Center, along with the Activity Center, will create the new Central Plaza. Removing the circle drive and adding an outdoor stage, the new plaza will be a wonderful location for people to gather and for future outdoor concerts and worship services to take place. The addition of these new facilities and the renovation of our existing facilities and infrastructure will drastically change the future for Lakeview and the lives that we can impact. The ability to market our facilities and attract more groups will help us in accomplishing our mission of transforming lives by experiencing God's love in a safe environment through meaningful relationships and gracious hospitality. The time is now. We cannot simply continue operating as we always have and expect to be here in the future. Our decisions and actions today will not only impact lives in the immediate future, but just like the people of the 1940s that followed God's plan to develop Lakeview, we will impact countless lives for decades to come. Join us as we continue on this journey with God.
As you can see, we have a lot of work to do. But the future is exciting for Lakeview. And we are excited to continue to work with you all and be present for you all in the future. How can we help you? I'm glad you asked. If I haven't already, I'd love to speak with you about the ways we can be in ministry with you. Whether hosting your groups or bringing programs to your congregation, Lakeview is a ministry resource that is not being utilized enough. We can bring a lot to your local congregation, more than just you coming to us. So please, feel free to contact me, and I'll be in touch with you to make that happen. Thank you to those of you who continue to make Lakeview your thin place. As mentioned in the video, the time to make the difference is now. The Lakeview experience is crucial to all people, young and not so young. And we plan to continue making it a better experience for each person that visits our holy grounds. My contact information is on the screen, and I would love to come and speak with you and your congregation. We are excited to continue working together for the transformation of the world and the strengthening of God's kingdom. Thank you.
Hey, nice seat.
Josh, we thank you for your leadership of an important part of the life of our conference, and we're blessed whenever we get to spend time at Lakeview. Friends, we also care deeply about senior citizens, and we are grateful for the ministry of the Methodist Retirement Centers. Alan Brown is the president and CEO. I wanted you to know him and to hear an update about how MRC is continuing to serve on our behalf in so many different places. Alan, welcome to the Texas Annual Conference.
Thank you. Good afternoon, conference. It is so good to be with you. Last year when I met you, I'd been on the job a year, and I started the job in April of 2020. And as you know, what was happening in the world and how that affected older adults. And I can tell you today that the last 2 years have probably been the most difficult that we've faced as an organization. But I can honestly say, because of God's grace and provision, they've also been the best. We have seen God work through our people and through our residents, and we have truly been blessed, and I'm so glad to be with you today. As I reflect today, I want to take you back in history. This is an important year for us. 2022 is a year of celebration for MRC as we celebrate 60 years of honoring and serving older adults as an expression of Christ's love. As a part of my report today, I want to reflect on the history of that. It was in April of 1958, a group within the Texas Annual Conference responded to God's call to step out on faith and form an organization to care for older adults. On April 7th, 1958, the Charter for Methodist Home for Older People was filed with the state of Texas. It's also important to remember those people, and some of you may remember them. The first trustees were Mrs. W.W. Fondren, O'Banion Williams, Morris Brownlee, R.A. Shepard, Latimer Murphy, K. Robert Daly, and Mrs. John Weston. The corporation was formed to establish and maintain a home or homes for older men and women and would belong to the Texas Annual Conference of the Methodist Church. Years of planning continued, and the dream became a reality in December of 1961 when the Buccaneer Hotel in Galveston was transferred to the conference by the W.L. Moody Jr. family. On January 1st, 1962, the hotel was renamed the Moody House and opened to serve older adults. The journey of what is now known as Methodist Retirement Communities had begun. The first executive steering committee members were Bishop Paul Martin, Reverend A. Grady Hollenquist, Joe Z. Tower, Herman Morgan, Mrs. Frank Wright, Dawson Bryan, G. Ray Loden, and O'Banion Williams. In April 1962, Reverend William Hawthorne became the first executive director. It was determined that each Methodist pastor in Galveston would be assigned to a committee to support the community. Those pastors were Reverend Ben Bering, Reverend Charles Danheim, and Reverend Compton Riley. I am so grateful for those early pioneers and their faithfulness to step out in faith with the support of the conference to make what is now Methodist Retirement Communities a reality. In reading the first bylaws, we find that applicants of the home had to be at least 65 years old, preferably of the Methodist faith, and residing within the boundaries of the Texas Conference. No applicant would be denied admission solely based on non-membership in the Methodist Church. I'm proud to report today that we have Methodists, Baptists, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, and non-denominational residents all living in perfect harmony. As we move forward in life, whether as an individual or an organization, it is always important to remember from where you have come. I'm grateful that as MRC celebrates 60 years, we can look to our past and appreciate the Texas Annual Conference and those that had a vision for serving older adults. I'm grateful that those early leaders were faithful to God's call. Now, 60 years after opening our first campus, MRC just opened our 13th campus last week in Fort Worth. We serve over 2,000 residents each day and employ over 1,000. Throughout our history, there are certain things that set MRC apart. First, we have never wavered from our mission of honoring and serving older adults as an expression of Christ's love. I'm grateful to our many board members and leaders that have always been faithful to the biblical calling to honor older adults and serve in a way that expresses Christ's love. One example of this has been the growth of our Covenant Fund. As we serve older adults, some plan well for retirement but simply outlive their resources. Some residents live in our income-qualified apartments and have no funds or government support when they need higher levels of care. Others never earned enough to save for the unanticipated high cost of care in later years. Through our Covenant Fund, we do everything we can to bridge the gap between the cost of care and a resident's ability to pay. In 2021, we provided $2.4 million in benevolence care and anticipate hitting the $3 million mark this year. The amount of benevolence care we can provide is only limited by the amount of dollars we can raise from the generosity of churches and individual donors. I want to thank Bishop Jones and the Texas Annual Conference for your ongoing support of our annual Mother's Day offering to benefit the Covenant Fund. If your church participates, thank you. If your church does not participate and you would like more information about how you can, please visit our booth. Another thing that sets MRC apart is our residents. Many in the world view getting older as something to be avoided at all cost. Our residents show us each and every day how to embrace life where you are and live it to the fullest. People come to our campus not just to live, but to thrive. They bring their life experiences and gifts and share them in our communities. Some call that engagement. I say it's making life good. If you haven't seen it, I hope you'll pick up a copy of the MRC Life magazine while you're here and see a further glimpse of some of our resident stories. Finally, MRC is set apart by our amazing employees. They come to work every day and walk alongside our residents to honor and serve them and make life good. That has never been more evident than it has been in the last 2 years. Some employees are drawn to MRC because of our mission statement. Some come just because they need a job. Either way, they quickly realize this is a purpose-driven work, and they have found a place where they can find their passion, grow as people, and make life good for those that they serve. Please watch this video with me and see just a glimpse of MRC.
It's almost too hard to put it into words accurately because it's such a deep feeling down in my heart. It is the hugest blessing of my life, up there on the same level of the husband that my Heavenly Father gave to me and the children that He gave to me. I can't really express how it feels to serve the Lord here at the Langford in the capacity as a chaplain, but just loving on the people who I know just love the Lord deeply, and we all want to serve Him together. And that's what it feels like, just coming into this place and serving the Lord together. This organization is so special because they care so deeply about the spiritual health of an individual as much as they care about the emotional and physical health. And so that's their goal, to take care of them, each person in that way. And so I feel honored to be a part of that, truly honored. And I'm going to thank God every day of my life for giving me the opportunity to serve Him this way.
We are immigrant, an immigrant student turned into a scientist. When we came to the United States, we learned a lot of things. The first people contact us are church people. And my wife and I, and later on our kids, we all go to church. So and become church goers into this church family. So church sponsor activities, sponsor mission. It's the best thing we can do. We want to be part of it. We want to be there, to enjoy, to be friends, God-loving people, and we just love it. I had a big house in Galveston, kind of want to change, and getting old too. I'm tired of maintaining of that big house. So we just begin looking, and then one day we find out there's a new construction of a retirement community in big city. Wow! And most important, it's going to be operated by a non-profit Christian faith mission. Wow! That's the big attraction. And we talk to each other, we say, let's go see it. And immediately set up an apartment. Next day was immediately, really. We moved in 2017, yeah.
No, 2015.
2015, okay. Since that day, we really enjoy every day of our life here.
So I was pastor for many years, and for about 12 years I was overseas in a place called Madagascar off Africa, building churches and teaching and training pastors. And with church work, it's the most wonderful work in the world. But sometimes it leaves you short on retirement sometime. And so it seemed like what I did for years for others, Bayview was doing for me, and giving me a wonderful return and a wonderful help to my financial situation. And God provides all our needs, that's for sure. And Bayview is one of those agencies that God has provided for us older people who maybe haven't worked for big companies and built up a large retirement, which is okay. I'm not complaining. Wouldn't trade my life for anyone's. But, with any job, there's shorts and longs to it. I'm so thankful for the financial arrangement that Bayview officials, I don't know when it started, but God bless the people that started this, because it's a wonderful blessing to us seniors.
That gives you just a little glimpse of what we do. One of the important things that you do is affirm our board of directors. In your pre-packet information, you received a list of directors, but due to the timing of our election cycle, an amended list has been filed and is a part of the record, so thank you for doing that. In closing, I want to thank you, Texas Annual Conference, for your vision to begin Methodist homes for older people over 60 years ago. The kingdom work that has been done and will be done among our residents, their families, and our employees is immeasurable. If we can ever be of assistance to you and your church, please don't hesitate to call on us. There are so many needs among our older adults in the conference and across the state of Texas, and we want to be a resource of information for you. So thank you for your support, and we look forward to the next 60 years.
Thank you, Alan. And we know that you are leading an organization that is doing incredible service and carrying the name Methodist into places that we wouldn't otherwise be. So thank you for all that you do. Friends, we turn back now to the Center for Connectional Resources and invite Hal Sharp, the chair of our Conference Board of Trustees, to come forward with the other members of the Center for Connectional Resources staff who are going to present this report.
And Bishop, as they're coming, will we do a practice poll after their report?
After their report, we're going to try again for our electronic devices and a practice poll. This is an important effort because we're trying to figure out how to do this well, and we think we might have solved some of the problems that existed this morning. So we're going to have another run at the practice poll. But Hal, it's your turn at the podium now.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us back, Bishop. Members of the annual conference and guests, my name is Hal Sharp. I am a layperson from Bel Air United Methodist Church in Bel Air, and it's my privilege to chair the Conference Board of Trustees. Today I report to you on behalf of the entire board, which is a hardworking group of folks for which we are truly grateful. And for other trustees on our board that are in the room today, would you please stand? We appreciate the hard work a lot. And most especially, we are grateful for our colleague, Will Reed. He does the shoe leather work for much of what we do on behalf of the conference. You'll find our report beginning on page 127 of the pre-conference journal. I wanted to share a few highlights with you from that report. All right. First, for those of you who are unfamiliar with our work, the Board of Trustees members serve as directors of the Texas Annual Conference. The board is responsible for all properties owned by the conference, including closed, discontinued, and abandoned local churches. Our report includes a complete list of properties, those that are pending, sold, and currently for sale, as well as churches which have closed, disaffiliated, or merged since our last report. A couple of updates for you. First is concerning the former Bethany United Methodist Church on Linkwood here in Houston. As we reported to you during the annual conference sessions last year, after recommendations from the property task force and the conference leadership team, the Board of Trustees agreed to sell the Bethany United Methodist Church property. In January of 2022, we signed a purchase agreement for $9,275,000. We expect to close on the sale of that property sometime next month. As recommended by the conference leadership team, after the Board of Trustees is reimbursed for the funds expended for the care for this property, 1/2 of the remaining proceeds will be designated for We Love All God's Children's Ministries in honor of the request of the former members of the Bethany United Methodist Church. The other half will be designated for the new faith communities and any other creative faith initiative as approved by the Cabinet and the Texas Annual Conference. A second update concerns the Boy Scouts of America bankruptcy. As many of you will recall, during the special call session of our annual conference on January the 11th of this year, delegates approved a resolution that we as a conference will, 1, pray for God's grace and healing upon those who have suffered abuse by those whom they trusted. 2, fully support the United Methodist Church and BSA bankruptcy settlement, including contributing financially the entire amount allocated to the Texas Annual Conference. 3, participation in healing actions that include working with our churches to review and update safe sanctuary policies to help safeguard young people from sexual abuse. Publishing a series of articles in our conference newspaper to call upon the churches to be vigilant in working to prevent child sexual abuse. These articles will be provided by the United Methodist Church BSA leadership team. And finally, recruiting conference leadership to listen to the survivors who choose to share their experiences, providing opportunities for healing and learning. On March 14th of 2022, the bankruptcy hearing began to consider not only the United Methodist Church settlement for the Survivor Trust Fund, but the entire Boy Scouts of America bankruptcy plan. The hearing has been completed, but the judge has not yet made a final ruling. If the plan is approved, our conference will contribute $994,468 to that Survival Trust Fund. All U.S. United Methodist Church conferences have committed to contribute the entire amount allocated to them. As soon as that fund reaches the $30 million combined amount allocated for the U.S. United Methodist Churches, United Methodist Church congregations, and that chartered BSA troops will be fully released from claims made during scouting activities, and victims will be compensated. The conference continues to work toward the healing actions to which it committed. In fact, you'll find more about reviewing and updating safe sanctuary policies to help safeguard our young people from sexual abuse during this session of the annual conference. New United Methodist Church BSA charters should be completed by the end of June. In the meantime, local churches chartering Boy Scout troops and Cub Scout packs are reminded to renew their youth and adult membership. As the BSA moves into a new future, the United Methodist Church continues to support scouting, but we recommend that churches who choose to recharter to do so safely and according to the recommendation outlined in our report. Please continue to pray for God's grace and healing on those who have suffered abuse. Next, we'd like to speak about one of the closed churches noted in our report, Bethel United Methodist Church in Elysian Fields. In June of 2021, the Texas Annual Conference was informed that the Bethel United Methodist Church was interested in disaffiliating. However, instead of contacting the district superintendent or the bishop to begin the process of discernment according to the principles of disaffiliation approved by the Texas Annual Conference in 2020, the church contacted an attorney. To protect the interests of the conference, we, the Board of Trustees, met and authorized the conference leaders to hire an attorney to represent the interests of the Texas Annual Conference. After negotiations, the church agreed to pay the settlement that was required by the Texas Annual Conference Principles of Disaffiliation, which included payment of the church's portion of the previous and current year's apportionments and the unfunded pension liability, in addition to reimbursing the Texas Annual Conference for our legal expenses. Because the church insisted on leaving the denomination prior to the Texas Annual Conference, the Conference Board of Trustees agreed to utilize the ad interim procedure defined in Section 2549.3 in the Book of Discipline for such procedures occurring between sessions of the annual conference. With a church conference vote, the church voluntarily transferred its title to all church property to the Texas Annual Conference Board of Trustees. The church amended its organizational documents to become Bethel Methodist Church, and afterwards the property was deeded back to Bethel Methodist Church. The transactions were completed on February 4th, 2022. As agreed in the negotiations, Bethel United Methodist Church will be officially closed when this report is approved. Finally, as part of our report, we have included the Texas Annual Conference Principles of Disaffiliation, which we recommended and which were approved by the Texas Annual Conference session in August of 2020. As you may recall, those principles require a local church interested in disaffiliation to contact their district superintendent and enter into a period of discernment. If the church wants to move forward toward disaffiliation, depending upon which disciplinary path they choose to take, they must call a church conference and approve a resolution to disaffiliate by either a simple majority or a 2/3 majority, and commit to pay the prior and current year's apportionments plus the church's unfunded pension liability. When these steps have been completed, they submit supporting documents to the Board of Trustees and may voluntarily meet with us when their documents are reviewed and considered for recommendation for approval. Following this, we recommend them to you, the Texas Annual Conference, for approval. This year, we're sad to report that there are 3 Texas Annual Conference churches who have completed that process and satisfied the requirements of the principles of disaffiliation. They have met every requirement, and in just a moment, we will recommend them to you for disaffiliation. First, Bishop, our entire report is before you, ready for approval, and then we will recommend the 3 local churches for disaffiliation.
This report from the trustees is present in the pre-conference journal, pages 127 to 139. It's before you from the board. I don't see anybody moving to speak to it. The chair has noted that it includes the final closing of Bethel United Methodist Church in Elysian Fields in Harrison County. If you will adopt this report and approve it, would you say yes? Yes. Any opposed, no. And it's done.
Bishop, the 3 congregations whose requests for disaffiliation are recommended for approval include in the North District, Texarkana Buchanan and Texarkana Ilo. In the West District, Marquay.
As the board is telling you, these 3 churches have completed the process of disaffiliation, and what is available to the annual conference is a simple vote up or down on approval. Sometimes when I see people walking, I'm not sure if you're coming to the microphone or not. So my apologies for a delay. Okay. Thank you. I take it you're ready to vote. If you will approve the disaffiliation of these 3 congregations out of the United Methodist Church and the Texas Annual Conference, would you say yes? Yes. Any opposed, no. And it's done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hal. We appreciate the hard work. Again, a group of people who volunteered and were willing to be elected to serve as one of your conference committees. I think this group has discovered there's been more activity than they ever dreamed might happen. We turn now to Kip Giltz for organizing another practice run at this electronic voting.
All right, folks. So here's what we're going to do. Unless this goes swimmingly well, which your comments from the peanut gallery have already indicated are not exactly there, we have conventional, proven, time-worn practices for doing voting. The guy sitting to my left is incredibly skilled at guiding us through this. I'm responsible for the real-time digital voting, not as skilled at walking us through this. But what we are, at the very least, we're going to learn some lessons from this. And so all this has been a chance to stall long enough for you to get your voting devices. This is a practice poll. This is not a binding poll. It's not going to change anything in our life together. I won't tell you that I hope that it passes. I'm not going to do that. That would be inappropriate use of my office.
You haven't even told us what the question is yet, but let's see if this works.
Now, if you would get to your device, if you would go.
Some people might not have checked them out.
Well, this is a practice poll. We're going to go with what we've got, and we're going to learn some lessons. Some people do have them, and they're yelling. So if you would go to your browser, I'm walking with you on this, and I'm going to vpoll.mobi, and it's got an error establishing a database connection, which may be what you were saying, and I couldn't hear you. So what this is doing is it's showing us the kind of load that it's putting on a system. It's clear that this is not the way we are going to go this year. The bishop and I are already aware. I guess the hand vote would be, how many of you prefer not to do digital voting right now? Bishop, I'm ready to the next item on our agenda. Do we want to move toward the poll or?
Friends, one of the reasons for attempting this electronic voting this year is that I fully anticipate that at the 2023 session of annual conference, we will be electing a new delegation to General Conference. We had trouble at the last time we did that, 2019, and we thought that this system might in fact be a new solution for it. So we have learned a lot in terms of how these things might work. So thank you for your patience in doing that. There's somebody standing near microphone number 1. Are you wishing to speak?
Nope.
No.
Standing near microphone 1.
Okay. Very good. Friends, we need a 20-minute break. Please come back at 5 after 3. Friends, this is your 2-minute warning. Our break is about to come to an end. I'm also asking if Gwendolyn Mason is in the house, would she please come to the platform for the next business item. We're going to be turning to the resolutions and start with resolution number 1. 2-minute warning, please take your seats.
No.
Order. It's time to resume our afternoon session. Friends, it's been our practice to offer a prayer at the time when churches disaffiliate. I think Reverend Lindsay Kirkpatrick is available to offer that prayer on behalf of our conference. Lindsay's at microphone number 2. Would you please be in attention to what Lindsay is about to say?
Let's please join together in prayer. Dear Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we give thanks to you today for decades of shared mission and ministry. We give thanks for our continued connection in God's mighty kingdom. And we pray a mighty blessing on these congregations as they have just disaffiliated from our annual conference, that they would go forth in the power of the Spirit, be driven by the vision of Jesus Christ to make disciples in your name. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Lindsay. We turn now to resolution number 1. It's in your pre-conference journal, pages 28 to 29. Gwendolyn Mason represents the writers of the resolution, and she has 5 minutes to make that presentation to you all according to our rules. Then it will be open for discussion and consideration by the body.
Good afternoon. Afternoon, Bishop. I don't know your kid, but hi.
Hi, Gwendolyn.
Hello, my name is Gwendolyn Young Mason. I am a member of Westbury United Methodist in Houston. I'm a mom, a grandmother, a former paralegal, a certified lay minister, and a hospice chaplain. But most importantly, I am a child of God. When a person or group submits a resolution to the Texas Annual Conference, we're given 5 minutes to present the resolution and make our case, if you will. I appreciate that opportunity, but I won't need the full 5 minutes. This seems so simple to me, so basic, and it seems like something Jesus would do. So my presentation would be brief. As a child of God, I believe the practice of common courtesy is one of the ways we show God's love to each other. We teach our children to say please and thank you, and to show respect to others. One of the most basic ways we have of showing respect is by not ridiculing or making fun of others. I was taught not to mock a person's size, clothes, skin color, or a person's family, or who they love, or any perceived differences we may have. And I taught my children the same values and behaviors. Why should we act any differently when we are here at annual conference, engaged in holy conferencing? The examples of hurtful language mentioned in the resolution aren't random or hypothetical. They represent things that have been said over the years, even recent years, during Texas Annual Conference business sessions. Delegates who have served in the past will likely remember them. As we work together to write this resolution, recalling those speeches, we thought about all who were affected, both in the moment and by the long-term impact. And we regret not having raised the concern before now. When disparaging language is used on the conference floor, we are not speaking in love. And some may not even realize the depth of the harm caused to others when hurtful language is used. But we all know that words can be very hurtful. We hope that implementing this proposed policy will help us be more aware and encourage and remind us to love our neighbors as yourself. In the movie Shawshank Redemption, the character Joe Coffey states, "Mostly, I'm tired of people being ugly to each other. I'm tired of the pain I feel and hear in the world every day." I agree with Joe Coffey. We should not be ugly to each other. No one should be caused pain by something said at annual conference. We all should feel loved and respected. The resolution asks us to remember we are all God's children and deserving of respect, that our words should not disparage, embarrass, or shame. Even when we disagree, we can have conversations that follows John Wesley's 3 simple rules. I hope we can covenant together to do no harm, do all the good we can, and love and honor God in the ways we treat all of God's beloved children. I urge us to vote yes and adopt this proposal.
Thank you. Please, no applause. Friends, we're engaged in holy conversation, and our rules call now for no applause or no expressions of vocal support or opposition. This now is before you as a body. It's open for your debate. I recognize the person at microphone number 1. You need to start off by saying your name, your status of lay or clergy, and your church.
Hi, Bishop. Laura Young, lay delegate, North District. And I'm one of the authors of this resolution, and on behalf of all of its authors, I'd actually like to make a motion to amend. We consider this a friendly amendment, but if I can get a second, I'll speak to it.
State your amendment, and then we'll ask for a second.
In continued conversation with a number of friends and conference leaders, we found a way to simplify this, to simplify the proposed process. The resolution was up on the screen a second ago, but we want to look at that again if we can. I move that the resolution be amended in the following way. We would strike through numbers 4 and 5. So all of what is currently in numbers 4 and 5 would be deleted, and a new number 4 would read as follows. A process developed by the conference leadership team will be implemented to help conference members keep our covenant of holy conferencing while considering resolutions during annual conference sessions. That's it, and that would conclude the resolution. This amendment simply takes the burden off the bishop and more appropriately involves the conference leadership team instead.
Is there a second to it? You may speak to it, Laura.
I have nothing else to add.
Okay. She is working off of paragraphs 4 and 5. This really belongs to the body, and we're not going to treat it friendly. It will invite the body to act. Paragraphs 4 and 5 would be stricken, and we need it in writing, Laura, but basically you're saying that it would be a process developed by the conference leadership team to implement it.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to the amendment itself? Microphone number 1. Number 2.
Christy Hale, Clergy, Faith Finette. Bishop Kipp and members of the Texas Annual Conference, I serve as a part of the CLT, and we wrestled with this resolution before us at our April meeting. We ultimately voted non-concurrence, as indicated in the pre-conference journal, as we struggled with the practicalities of 3 people tasked with monitoring the body. Many in the room said that they wouldn't want that job, and that it was incumbent upon all of us as members of the body of Christ to hold each other accountable. So I speak now in favor of this amendment, as it does put accountability with each and every one of us on the floor, not just with those on the stage. My friends, as disciples of Jesus Christ, we are called to a higher standard of living. We are called to love. Jesus called out Peter in the garden for putting earthly things ahead of God's interest. And what are God's interests? That we are to love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our soul, and with all our strength. And that means our words. That means our actions. And Jesus gave us that second commandment, to love each other as ourselves. Friends, in this time we have people that are dying because of hateful, hurtful words. We have children who are scared. We have people who are bullied. And so it is incumbent upon us to show the world and everybody that is watching that the church believes what we teach and we practice what we preach. Thank you.
I take that as a speech in favor of the amendment. Is there anybody who wishes to speak against the amendment? Yes, microphone number 1.
Dan Hannon, clergy, retired. In 1945, George Orwell wrote a book entitled Animal Farm. As a part of that writing, he talked about thought police who governed what was said in the group. Anytime an organization decides to appoint people to control thoughts, or through what the words are hate, you're creating a thought police. I think that is an affront to who we are as Christians and as Americans in our understanding of free speech. There is plenty of avenues within our polity and the Roberts Rules of Order to control behavior of delegates and how we work. And I would remind the annual conference of some great theologians, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was imprisoned and hanged because there were governments who thought his speech was hate. And then there was Dr. Martin Luther King in my generation who was persecuted because there were whites in churches and church officials who thought his language was hate speech. I ask this conference not to devolve into the animal farm and defeat this resolution.
That was a speech against the amendment and the resolution, I take it. Is there somebody who wishes to speak for the amendment? That's what's before us at the moment. I take it you're ready to vote. If you will support the amendment, would you raise the hand? Down. If you're opposed to the amendment, would you raise the hand? The amendment carries. What's before you now is the resolution as amended. I now have a copy of it. It strikes, just to be clear about the whole motion in its current form, it would strike sections 4 and 5 on page 29 and substitute a new section 4. A process developed by the conference leadership team will be implemented to help conference members keep our covenant of holy conferencing while considering resolutions during annual conference sessions. We've had one speech, the presentation. Is there anybody who wishes to speak against, for the whole resolution as it currently is? Microphone number 2. Somebody wishing to speak for it? No? Okay, microphone number 2, the person at the microphone. You were there first.
My name is Joellen Snow. I'm a member of St. Mark's UMC in Houston and a lay district delegate from the Central South District. Honestly, it makes me really sad that we need to even consider this resolution to prevent hate speech. Whether we are traditionalist, compatibilist, reconciling Orthodox, evangelical, confessing progressive, or whatever title we might place on ourselves and others within the church, we are all here because we are Christians. We are most importantly followers of Jesus Christ. Jesus taught us to love your neighbor as yourself. How can you follow this commandment and speak hatefully to your Christian siblings? Our leader, John Wesley, taught us to do no harm. How can it not be harmful to engage in speech which is disparaging and demeaning of other church conference attendees? I know that issues of human sexuality and church disaffiliation are difficult, emotional issues within our church. But the discussion of difficult issues does not create an exception to the commandment that we should love our neighbors as ourselves, or the teaching that we should do no harm. It does not give us freedom to temporarily remove our Christian hats. In fact, it is when we are debating these hard issues that it is imperative that we remember why we're here and what Jesus called us to do. I strongly urge you to vote in favor of this resolution to prevent hate speech, and additionally, to recommit yourselves to engage in holy listening, holy speaking, and holy conferencing, so they will know we are Christians by our love. Thank you.
Microphone number 1, is this a speech against the resolution?
No, sir.
Okay.
Are you against?
Did you say yes or no? I'm sorry.
Mine's no.
I'm looking for a speech against the resolution. Microphone number 2.
Thank you. Chris Pike, I'm a lay delegate from Woodlands Methodist Church. I want to agree fully with the proposer that we should always be courteous and respectful and never denigrate each other, but I am completely opposed to this resolution because I think it's a very dangerous path we set ourselves upon when we try to control each other's speech in that way. Let me give you an example why. Pentecost is just a few days away. Let's reimagine the scene in Acts after the first Pentecost using 21st century language. The chief priests and the Pharisees come down and they look Peter in the eye and they say, "You and your apostles are saying horrible things, preaching about Jesus. You're upsetting us and you're doing great harm, and you must stop this hate speech immediately." Where would we be today if Peter had taken the belief that any individual on earth could stop another individual from expressing their views on God? More to the point, we set ourselves up with this resolution with the possibility of having someone speaking out or giving an opinion that is in support of established United Methodist doctrine and being shut down because someone else declares it to be hate speech. Finally, I would suggest that those who like the idea think that if you silence someone whose ideas you don't like today, tomorrow it could be someone silencing you. It's just a bad idea, and I ask you to help me vote it down. Thank you.
Microphone number 1, is this a speech for?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead. By the way, friends, I need to remind you of our rules that each speech is limited to 3 minutes. So far, y'all have been doing pretty well at recognizing that, but I just need to name the rule before I invoke it. Yes, microphone number 1.
My name is Wayne Garrett, and I am a laity member of Westbury United Methodist Church. This is necessary, and it's important, and it is not trying to be thought police. Last year at this conference, a lady member from Deadwood United Methodist Church equated LGBTQ people as pedophiles. That is nothing if not hate speech. And I don't want us to be reduced to always ringing a bell when someone's saying something that we may not like. But I am a cradle to the grave United Methodist, and hopefully that second part's no time soon. And I love this church. The people, the clergy and ministers who raised me up and loved me and knew that I was queer way before I was, impacted my life. And I don't want to leave this church. But we can't continue to allow language like that used here. We're Methodists. We agree not to speak to each other like that. We're Christians. We say we will do better. I ask that all of y'all vote for this, please. Thank you.
That was a speech in favor of the resolution. Is there a speech against it? Microphone number 1. Number 2 over here. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm Butch Marsalis. I'm a lay representative from Deadwood from the East District, and I've been the representative for about the last 4 years. There's been no ladies here. The people of Deadwood disagree with resolution number 2. One, and the reason being is, one, if there is talk like that, I think it can be handled specifically without limiting everyone else's free speech. Number 2, Bishop Jones, whether you agree with him or not, one thing he is excellent at is running meetings, and he is very good. The meetings are the majority rules and the minority is heard. Reason number 3, this has been done before, and in my opinion, it didn't work. A group of people agreed to listen to hate speech. There was actually a diverse group of people, a man, a woman, and a young person, and they agreed it was hate speech, and John the Baptist lost his head. The other group also agreed it was hate speech, and Jesus Christ was nailed on the cross. The other group, Paul, then we can talk that. There's millions of examples of where this has been not done correctly. There is nothing new under the sun. Nothing. Remember, God's America is a country of free speech. The people of Deadwood recommend that you vote against this thing. Thank you.
That was a speech against. Is there a speech for?
Yes.
Microphone number 1.
Danny Yang. I am clergy from Westbury UMC. Again, my name is Danny Yang. It has been my greatest honor, and you've heard from a few Westbury voices now. It has been my greatest honor to be pastor at Westbury for the last 6 years. And this is what you need to know about Westbury United Methodist Church. It is the only church I can think of, and I haven't heard anybody contradict this, that has been led by a white man, a white woman, a black man, an Asian American man, and soon a black woman. That is amazing to have a church led like that. Now that doesn't just happen. You need a church family that is willing to receive a pastor like that, to have senior pastors represent such diversity. And that is the church family I get to lead, have been able to lead for 6 years. And I will tell you a reality about diversity. Sometimes things get said that offend. Sometimes the senior pastor says things that offend. It just seems to happen when you mix a lot of people together. But the reason Westbury has stayed a church for all people is we named a value of our church as accountability. And so if I say something that offends, the church family knows they can come and say, that should not have been said. And this is what this resolution is about accountability for us as a church family. That if our annual conference is pretty diverse in this room, it could use a few more Asian Americans. But I know it's something we want to be a diverse group. I know it's something clergy recruitment works on. But if we want to be a diverse group, then we have to hold on to this accountability that when something is said that offends and hurts and demeans or dehumanizes, we will stop as a church family, name it, and call for love again to be reestablished in this space. Please vote for Resolution 1. Thank you.
That was the speech in favor. Is there a speech against? Yes, microphone number 2.
Hi, Tim Turner, clergy from San Augustine. I would advise you to vote against this resolution. I am fully in favor of speaking in love and avoiding all hate speech. The main issue that I take with this resolution is the vagueness in its wording, especially in the amended form. What we would be doing as an annual conference is giving the core leadership team the power to define that process. We would not be having the definition of how the process works of monitoring hate speech. That is a dangerous proposition that limits our ability to self-monitor and keep hate speech in control ourselves through Robert's Rules of Order, through the normal procedures for dealing with hate speech. So I would advise you to vote against this resolution. Thank you.
We've now had 4 speeches for and 4 speeches against. Microphone number 1, which is yours?
Against.
Okay, go ahead.
Bishop Drew Weber, Atlanta North District. You can't regulate or legislate this stuff of the Holy Spirit. You know, as Christians, we are supposed to produce the fruit of the Holy Spirit by the help of the Holy Spirit. That's Galatians 5:22-21. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, self-control. And you know, if you're in the flesh, you're not going to do that. And I'm one that stands before you that I've been in the flesh before, and I've posted things on Facebook that were hurtful and I shouldn't have done. But the Holy Spirit reminded me, and a few other people who posted back, that was not in line with my Christianity. But you can't legislate this stuff. I mean, where do you draw the line? If somebody calls me a bad golfer, is that hate speech? Well, I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, okay. Well, the point is you can't legislate this stuff. It is of the Holy Spirit. Sometimes we get in our flesh, we say things we shouldn't, but this stuff shouldn't be legislated. And I still say that this line is going to be moved, and we should vote no.
I'm looking for a speech in favor of the resolution at this point. Microphone number 2, go ahead.
Randy Smith, retired clergy. The problem seems to be here that we've drug into this conversation popular understandings of what hate speech is. I'd like to clarify a little bit what that is. I wish we weren't even using the word hate speech. What we're really talking about here are ad hominem attacks on the person who is making a statement. If you are speaking to a concept or an understanding, that's one thing. But if you're attacking the person for being who they are, that is what is being addressed by this kind. And I'll give you a wonderful example. Good old white male here had the thrill of being called a communist dupe on the floor of this annual conference. Now, that person who made that statement didn't know me, had never met me, had never spoken to me, has never spoken to me since. I've never had the opportunity to say anything to him about my political positions on anything. But he assumed that because I was taking a position on something, that I therefore had to be a communist dupe. That is what we're talking about here. That is an ad hominem attack on the person, not on what they're thinking and not on how they've said it. It's what you have said about them as a person that's at issue here.
Microphone number 1, are you speaking for or against?
I'll be speaking for.
Go ahead.
Bishop, members of the Texas Annual Conference, howdy. I didn't think I'd be...
Your name, status, and church, please.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. I am Thomas Breen, Liberty Hill United Methodist Church. Many of you know me as Eddie Breen. I may get done speaking, you might have some more names for me, but I didn't have any speech prepared, but as I'm reading this and hearing people speak on it, I'm not typically somebody who is against free speech. I'm very much for free speech. I sometimes say slightly offensive things myself. I come from a family of Irish sailors. It just happens. But as I read this, it seems like we have a very clear definition of what this is referring to as hate speech. So I'm mainly curious, anybody arguing against the resolution, if you could tell me what in the definition of hate speech we are disagreeing with, because, like I said, I'm a fan of Orwell, I'm a fan of C.S. Lewis saying you can't legislate morality, but I don't see anything in the definition of hate speech provided here that there is necessarily present for me to disagree with. Thank you.
I'm looking for a speech against the resolution.
Bishop, may I call the question?
You may. Well, you're moving the end debate.
Yes.
And the question, what is your name, church, and status?
My name is Emily Chapman. I am clergy, St. Mark's, Houston.
All right, and you're moving the previous question. Is there a second to that? All right. I take it, if you will close debate, this is not voting on the resolution yet, it's voting to end debate and discussion of the resolution. Would you raise the hand? Down. If you're opposed to closing debate, raise the hand. And there's a 2/3 to do so. We're now going to move to vote on the resolution. Let me remind you of what we're voting on. It's on pages 28 and 29 of your pre-conference journal. It has been amended by your action to delete items 4 and 5 and to substitute a new section 4. A process developed by the conference leadership team will be implemented to help conference members keep our covenant of holy conferencing while considering resolutions during annual conference sessions. Friends, we will be voting by, you're standing at microphone number 1. Is that to interrupt the voting process?
I'd just like to ask a clarifying question before we vote. Is that possible?
As long as it's a real clarifying question and not a hidden speech.
It's an actual clarifying question.
All right.
Matt Neely, Senior Pastor at Good Shepherd Cypress. My question is, with the amended version that we are getting ready to vote on, it sounds like the amendment is that it would kick the responsibility for a process to the CLT. I want to clarify, would that mean that the CLT would then bring a report to the annual conference that we would have to approve at that time?
No. The process developed by the CLT will be implemented to help conference members. So whatever the conference leadership team decides to do will be implemented in order to help that happen. It also, just to remind you that sections 1, 2, and 3 of the resolution about statements that need to be made in accordance with what's in the text are still in the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
The CLT.
I'm sorry. I think we've had plenty of discussion about this. We are going to vote now. I'm going to put it to you by show of hands. Keep your hand up until I tell you to lower them. We'll see if the vote is clear enough that I can decide did it pass or not. If it's at all uncertain, I will call for a standing vote. We'll do it by show of hands first. If you will support the resolution as amended, raise the hand and keep them up, please. Down. If you're opposed, would you raise the hand? All right, we're going to have a standing vote. If you're in support of the resolution, please stand and remain standing until a teller has counted you. We need to have the tellers get into place. Please, you may not be doing this if you're standing against the wall. We will not count people up against the wall. And if you would make sure that your name tag is facing out so the tellers can recognize that it's color-coded that allows you to vote. Tellers, there are still people in this section standing. Does that mean they've not been counted? Want to do that way, and
so the tellers can be released to get ready to. Tellers, once you have a count, if you will bring it to our head teller, as soon as we get those numbers in, we'll be able to move to the next piece of the voting.
If you are opposed to the resolution, please stand and remain standing until you're counted. I have the results of the vote. In favor of the resolution, 568. Against the resolution, 642. The resolution fails. We turn now to resolution number 2. I call to the stage Chapel Temple and John Stevens. Again, our procedure on these matters is that the drafter of the resolution has 5 minutes to present, and then an opponent has another 5 minutes, and then it will be open for consideration by the body. Chapel Temple represents the drafters of it. Chapel?
Thank you, Bishop. Well, good afternoon, folks. I come today to ask you to endorse a pretty simple resolution labeled Forward in Love. It comes from almost 300 good lay and clergy of this conference, co-sponsoring it, People from both small and large churches, rural, urban, and suburban. It began as a resolution supporting the protocol. Then, of course, General Conference never happened, and so that carefully thought-out compromise was never able to be voted on. You can see from the list of those who endorsed it in this resolution, though, that it had broad support from across the whole connection, from progressive and liberal and centrist and conservative and evangelical conferences, bishops, church leaders, and others. It was our very best chance to walk through our differences hand in hand and heart in heart. But again, we never had that chance. So the motion is simply a statement of what would have been a path forward, not just for the whole church, but for this conference as well. It asks that we might adopt the spirit of that protocol, a spirit of peace, with respect to how we handle those with whom we have walked for so long. It calls for us to treat each other with respect and charity and graciousness, with an eye towards actually having any minimal damage financially and spiritually, which an acrimonious parting brings. To put it in Wesleyan terms, as we've heard already, it calls us to do no harm, to be at peace with each other, especially those who are of the household of faith. Following the decision not to allow annual conferences as a whole to leave, this motion was amended to now focus on where our potential conflicts may be directed, that is, to all the local churches. It is in accord with our principles of how you disaffiliate in this conference. It is in accord with what our bishop has stated as his goals for it. It is in response to a critique that it did not offer enough of the specifics. There were some amendments. Those will not be here today. But still, some will say that we don't need this resolution because we already do indeed have all those principles. This motion will just be a confusing one for folks. In truth, I think given the rising uncertainty of the season ahead, when we will lose our current bishop and may in fact lose some of the provisions of the discipline which have been offered as an exit plan for churches, it is not enough to simply say, don't worry, we've got this. We need to reaffirm that we do indeed desire to treat each other not simply out of fairness, but with kindness and respect, especially as the rhetoric may rise and the conditions may change. Unfortunately, the actions of some across the broader church have proven to us that even things which may seem clear can be muddied by those who want to keep churches in check, even against their wills. Even our own conference leadership team, which was made up of 14 clergy and 4 lay members at the time, what's up with that, voted against this rather simple idea. I think that's why we need this motion. That's why I would urge you to vote for it. This should not be about the money, but about our master. It should not be about the trust clause, but about trusting each other and trusting God. It should not be about control, but about convictions and charity and compassion. This really is about going forward in love. It's that simple. It does not ask for anything which we haven't already said. It does not ask that churches which wish to leave get a buy on any of the conditions. It does not change any of the financial aspects of it. It does not put any additional burden on churches which are still here.
Chapel, you're out of time.
It's time to go. Thank you.
It's our practice to invite somebody to respond on the other side of the issue. John Stevens.
Thank you, Bishop and delegates of the Texas Annual Conference. I greet you this afternoon in the name of Christ. Also am a member of the conference leadership team, so I thought helpful to share some behind the scenes of our April 7th meeting where we did vote non-concurrence for this resolution. I agreed at that time to share our rationale on the video in the pre-conference meeting. Some of you may remember those pre-conference meetings where we perfected our online vpoll.mobi election process. Sorry, Kip. Sorry. Love Kip. The CLT's concerns were twofold. First, the resolution calls for the conference to live into the spirit of the protocol, which Chap addressed and we've talked about. It also includes ambiguous and confusing language regarding the issues related to trust clause minimum requirements for disaffiliation established by the Board of Trustees. If you turned in the pre-conference meetings, you heard me talk about the protocol and how it introduces a lot of potential pitfalls for people on both sides of our denominational disagreements. Chap heard those concerns, and we've talked about it, and he did change the word from protocol to peace, and I think that's very helpful. And so when Kip texted me and said, "Are you still planning on talking against this resolution?" I said, "But Chap changed it to the spirit of peace." And I thought maybe he was setting me up. But it's the second concern that the CLT had in voting non-concurrence that has not been remedied yet, and I wanted to share you what the issues are. The paragraph says, "Be it further resolved that congregations which prayerfully determine to align themselves with another denomination, independent of the Texas Annual Conference, will be released from any claims on their assets resulting from the trust clause of the Book of Discipline, and that the bishop and the conference board of trustees shall work with such congregations to effect a minimal financial impact on the local church." This paragraph has some ambiguous, confusing, and some information that is asked that we already have. We have a clearly defined set of principles of disaffiliation. I believe that our trustees, along with our bishop, have done a good job in our conference by not imitating some of the things that are going on across the connection. The trustees presented these principles in 2020. They were overwhelmingly adopted by this body. Our annual conference and trustees have already created that fair and equitable set of disaffiliation principles with minimal impact that is guided by the Book of Discipline. Later today, you'll hear a resolution of some of us that worked on asking for the Board of Pensions to calculate the withdrawal liability in a way that gives disaffiliating churches the benefit of the pension reserves that they helped create. Second, this resolution says that congregations which prayerfully determine to align themselves with another denomination, independent of the Texas Annual Conference, will be released from any claims upon their assets resulting from the trust clause in the Book of Discipline. The statement actually doesn't align with our current principles. In word, disaffiliation principles currently state that the release of the trust clause does require some assets of the disaffiliating local church, 2 years of apportionments, and pension withdrawal liability. And it is upon completion of those steps and payment that the trustees are then able to release the trust clause. Third, it calls for a release from the trust clause if a church, quote, aligns with another denomination. Actually, some churches may decide that they choose to become independent and not align with the denomination at all. So this statement also is countering our current principles, which doesn't have that limitation included in it. Fourth, and finally, the resolution states that the bishop and the board of trustees shall work with such congregations to effect minimal financial impact upon the church. The CLT again felt that the trustees and our conference have already provided that in our principles that we have. And so the statement herein, the way it's worded, it is somewhat vague and not clear. It doesn't outline those specifics. Could be misunderstood by delegates or local church or laity or even pastors because it does not include what the minimum impact actually is that is already in our principles of disaffiliation. So this resolution has been partially amended. I agree with the partial amendment. I thank Chap for hearing that and removing the focus on the protocol to peace, but the resolution still contains some confusing, ambitious language that really needs to be cleaned up if it is going to pass to provide clarity and accuracy so that it can be helpful. But I think still, as the way it is now, the CLT is recommending non-concurrence, and I just came to share with you why it is that we discussed and debated and recommend that non-concurrence for this resolution. Thank you, Bishop.
This resolution is now before you. Microphone number 2.
This is not a speech for or against, it's a request for information.
Okay.
So in regards to the second, third, and fourth whereases and the speech. Oh, yeah, sorry. Nathan Lonsdale Bledsoe, clergy, St. Stephen's, Houston. So whereases 2, 3, and 4 and Chap's speech reference the broad support for the protocol.
Excuse me, Nathan, did you identify who you are?
I did. I
Thank you.
started talking, and then I didn't, and- yeah.
I know who you are, so I probably
I
was not paying enough
I
attention.
usually do too.
Go ahead.
So I'm just wondering, the broad support for the protocol included in it something that was pretty significant, which was that bishops and boards of ordained ministry would hold in abeyance charges related to clergy performing same-sex weddings or same-gender, to use our language, self-avowed practicing homosexual clergy who are seeking ordination. And that was a big part of why it got support from progressive folks like me. So I wonder if that's part of the spirit that this resolution seeks to include.
Nathan, this appears to be a speech hidden into a question. So I'm going to count this as a speech against the resolution because by asking the question the way you did, you really are trying to say it's the whereas is interpreted that way.
I am earnestly interested to know if that's part of the spirit that is outlined in the whereases.
The text stands as it is, and I need to ask Chapel, there was reference to you having amended this in the first, now therefore be it resolved, shall adopt the spirit of the...
Yes, sir. It was amended spirit of peace after the protocol.
Okay,
was
I did not
adopted.
hear you specifically state that.
Yes, sir. And it's on the screen as that way, too. And I apologize.
Okay, I'm not looking at the screen. I want the body to know so that the spirit of the protocol is no longer present in that,
No, sir, it is
therefore
not.
be
It's not. It
resolved.
says spirit of peace.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Another person wishing to speak to this one way or the other. Are you standing at the microphone number 2? Go ahead.
Yes.
Before you do, Bishop, I did want to let you know also that there was a deletion of a phrase in this which referred to conference disaffiliation under the first be it resolved.
Okay.
In light of the Judicial Council decision 1444, that was deleted. So the last phrase after the number 2553,
okay,
that phrase is deleted because of the Judicial Council decision that came out after.
Were there any other amendments to this text?
There was only one other, and there was a misstatement of Rocky Mountain Conference. Should have been Mountain Sky Conference.
Okay,
in the
so
next to last
the maker
paragraph.
of this amendment, of this resolution, has amended it in 3 places to change Rocky Mountain to Mountain Sky, to change adopt the spirit of the protocol to read adopt a spirit of peace, and then to delete the words in that same now therefore be it resolved paragraph after the number 2553. Okay, now we're clear what's before the body. Microphone number 2. Who are you, and talk to us.
Thank you, Bishop. I'm Janet Allen. I'm laity from St. Mark's, Houston, and I want to thank you for your leadership in helping us to really make sure that we're clear in our resolutions. It's important. Clarity is very important, and this isn't clear to me, and I'll give you an example. I don't know about your household, but in my household, minimum financial impact has a wide range of interpretation.
There you go. Yes. That's a speech against?
No, please, we're not going to applaud. We're engaging in holy conversation. I treat that as a speech against.
Bishop, I have a question.
Okay, microphone number 2. What's your question? And please, you guys, occasionally I've been in Methodist meetings where people claim it's a question, but they really are making a speech. So let's be clear. What is your question?
Benjamin West, SFA Wesley Foundation. Would you be willing to read the now therefore be it resolved paragraph as amended, the entirety of the paragraph, not the other resolves, but that first one, because that was where there were two amendments.
Yes, my understanding is it reads this way. Now therefore be it resolved that the Texas Annual Conference shall adopt a spirit of peace in the handling of any congregational request for disaffiliation from either the United Methodist Church through paragraphs 2548.2 or 2553. Okay, microphone number 1.
I have a speech against.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Justin Flint. I'm a lay delegate. I'm an attendee at St. Paul's. I'm an attorney, and if I had more time up here, I'd pause for heckling and jokes, but I don't. So I'm going to move on and tell you that Job is my favorite book of the Old Testament. It's my favorite book of the Old Testament because I think it gives us an answer to the problem of suffering. It's an answer that is as relevant now as it has always been, and that answer is when God shows up, he says, "You don't understand why there is suffering. Trust me, I do." But that's not the only part of it. And I have a very high opinion and theology of the incarnation because it answers the rest of that question in a way we can understand. In the incarnation, Jesus, God as Jesus, says, essentially, "I will not allow any suffering to befall you that I am not willing to suffer myself." And that is a form of justice and fairness that I see in the words of Jesus when he tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves, and it is a way I look at fairness when I look at the world around me. And in this case, what I see in this proposal is that if I understood the bishop correctly in pre-conference meetings, we have the most generous, or at least one of the most generous, disaffiliation policies in the U.S. UMC in terms of the cost to disaffiliate. And this was the policy that we adopted as a conference in 2020. And I think at that time, there was an expectation that progressive churches would be leaving when we adopted that. And now that the tide has turned and it seems that more conservative churches are going to be leaving, this proposal seems to ask for something different, something easier. And while I do believe wholeheartedly that churches need to follow their conscience, and if that leads them somewhere else, I understand that and I accept that. I also think we need to stick with the commitments that we said were what were fair to begin with. So I ask you to vote against this proposition. Thank you.
We've had 2 speeches against. I'm looking for a speech in favor of the resolution. Is that you, microphone number 2?
Are you in favor? Yeah. I'm a speech against.
Oh, I had 3.
Is there anybody wishing to speak for the resolution?
I have a point of clarification. I'd like to ask a question.
Okay.
When does the...
Who are you?
I'm sorry. My name is Stacy Peaver Anzik. I'm clergy currently on family leave. Thank you, clergy brothers and sisters, for voting another year for me. I appreciate that. When does the resolution belong to the body? Because I see the edit up there, and it says it was edited May the 26th or something. And does the resolution belong to the body at the beginning of annual conference or when it's submitted?
It belongs to the body when the maker puts it before the body, which was today. I've allowed the amendments. There were minor amendments about language, and I've allowed them, and that's the resolution that's before the body. If you object, you can move to overrule my ruling.
I'll ponder that.
Is there a speech in favor of the resolution? Yes, microphone number 1.
Jim Bass at Friendswood, UMC. I'm the senior pastor there, and I would like to speak in favor of this resolution.
Okay.
I think it is a spirit of peace. I think we're in a time in which many of our churches are having to consider very tough decisions about whether or not to stay a part of this connection or move into a different connection. We've seen in other annual conferences how bishops have tried to impose higher requirements to lead, where bishops have threatened members of the clergy who would talked to their congregations about possibly moving into the GMC, threatened them with potential charges against disobedience to the discipline of the church. And I think this resolution will help us to remind all of us that despite whether we're going to stay in the UMC or maybe move into the GMC, we should have this discussion with a spirit of peace, not having these other items potentially brought upon our churches or our clergy. Bishop Jones, we've been very thankful for your leadership here, but his term is coming to an end. And I think this is a resolution that will help us just to move forward with this minimum acrimony and just a spirit of peace as we deal with these very tough decisions.
Microphone number 1, speech against.
Yes, I'm Carol Greenwald. I'm a layperson from Longview First Methodist, and I'd like to offer a speech against the resolution.
You may.
We as a body have just demonstrated the process that we are discussing with this resolution. It was a process that was put in place over 2 years ago. Our conference leadership team representative reminded us that it was overwhelmingly supported, the process. And that number was actually 92% in favor. And previous to this conference, two United Methodist bodies with grace and respect were allowed to disaffiliate with a vote of peace and a vote of grace from this conference. One was Bearing Memorial, you remember, and also Grace Fellowship from Katy, and we have just witnessed 3 more. My point in speaking against this resolution is that we have a well-defined process that this conference approved 2 years ago. We have just run that process again. It was not done with acrimony. It was not done with vitriol. It was done with grace and peace. I have great respect for Chap Temple and those that put this resolution together. I see it as superfluous. I see it as having vague parts to it. I believe that it does not add anything to our process that we see that the Board of Trustees has administered properly. So I would vote against it, and I would urge the conference to do so.
We've now had 3 speeches against and 1 for. What are you doing, microphone number 2?
Question, I promise it's a question.
Okay.
Walt Agnew, lay delegate from Chapelwood United Methodist Church. Could you please tell us all the total number of registered delegates who are eligible to vote in the conference?
If everybody were to show up, that number is upwards of 2,000. Not everybody shows up, and the quorum for a meeting like this is the people who are present and voting. So if we take it 1,210 voted on that last resolution.
That was my question. So that is a lower number than the total who have actually picked up credentials.
I don't know how many have actually picked up credentials here, but they may be out in the hall or doing something else. It's whoever's in the room voting.
Thank you.
Microphone number 1, what's your speech?
Bishop, my name is Peter Camarano, and I'm clergy serving in Chapelwood in Lake Jackson. I'd like to move to postpone this resolution indefinitely. I'm happy to speak to the rationale as to why, or to receive a second before doing so.
You may. Is there a second to this? I hear a second. You may speak to it, Peter.
So my rationale for making this motion to suspend this resolution indefinitely is in recognition that there is a pending judicial council declaratory decision that we're waiting for that decision to come back regarding paragraph 2548.2 of the Book of Discipline. And in light that this resolution relies upon that paragraph and others for its outcomes, I'm interested in how that decision may impact what's happening here. The motion to postpone indefinitely is used when the body does not wish to adopt a motion or, for a variety of reasons, there's too much change or lack of reliability in the circumstances around the resolution. It seems as we talk here today that there are many things that we are unaware of or that are ambiguous. And I wonder what it would be like for us to postpone this resolution indefinitely. That's not a vote for or against the resolution. It's a choice that it would be better to take up this issue at a later date.
This motion to postpone indefinitely is in order, and it's before you. Does anybody wish to speak to that before we vote on it? All right. Yes, microphone number 1.
Our conference rules are...
Who are you?
Burnham, clergy.
Give us your name, please.
Jason Burnham, clergy, Covenant, The Woodlands. Our conference rules already remedy the issue that has been raised by Peter Camarano. In our rules, it states that in any conflict between the Book of Discipline and our conference rules or structure, the discipline wins. So after the Judicial Council rules on 2548.2 this summer, we will have the answer, and anything that is bringing 2548.2 to the table will either be affirmed or stricken based on our conference rules already established. I speak against this postponement.
All right. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on the question of postponing indefinitely? Yes, microphone number 2.
Victoria Campbell, St. Peter's United Methodist Church clergy. I like to speak against this as well, just because I feel that if we were always waiting for the Judicial Council to rule on things before we as a body decided what our choices were, we would never get anything accomplished. So I feel like the body should have the right to vote this up or down. And then if the Judicial Council rules differently so that we've removed one of those, we deal that at its proper time. And it may not rule against it at all, which means that whatever we choose today would still stand. So I vote against this suggestion.
I don't see anybody moving to speak on this matter. I'm going to put the question to you. If you will, the motion is to postpone indefinitely the consideration of this resolution. If you would vote to postpone it, would you raise the hand? Down. If you're opposed to postponing it, would you raise a hand? The motion fails. We're back to the main motion. Jim, you've already spoken on this matter.
Can I call the question?
No, but somebody else can.
Right here.
Microphone number 2, yes.
Kimberly Carney, clergy, Wesley Memorial, and I would like to call the question.
She's moving the previous question, which is a motion to end debate. Is there a second? Second. All right. This is the vote I'm putting to you is, do you wish to end debate? If you would like to end debate, raise the hand. Down. If you're opposed to ending debate, raise the hand. And it reaches 2/3, so that we're going to move now to voting on the resolution as with the 3 minor amendments that were noted earlier. If you would support I'm sorry, you're standing at microphone 2. We're getting ready to vote. What's your question?
Trey Comstock, clergy, Grace Palestine. I request a paper ballot for this vote.
Friends, that's in my ruling as a chair, but I will take that as a motion. If you would like a paper ballot, would you raise the hand? Down. If you're willing to vote by show of hands or standing ballot, raise the hand. And the chair is affirmed at that point. Yes, microphone number 1.
Hi, Jimmy Principe, St. Paul's, Houston, laity. I had a point of clarification on one of the speeches for on this resolution.
Okay.
So one of the speeches for said that the bishop, like a new bishop, could suspend what we as an annual conference voted on in 2020. Is that true, or is there a process that would have to be gone through to change our rules from 2020?
I don't think that's exactly what was said. I think what was said, as I recall it, was that there might be a new bishop who would have an influence over how the process was interpreted and delivered, and that's an accurate statement.
But the annual conference process would still exist?
The annual conference's principles of disaffiliation would still exist.
Okay, thank you.
I do not regard this resolution as amending our principles of disaffiliation. The maker said that that was not the intention of this document, and so far the principles of disaffiliation are not before the body for amendment. All right, we are going to put the resolution to you. If you would adopt resolution number 2 as amended by the maker, would you lift the hand? Down. If you're opposed, would you lift the hand? The resolution fails. Again, friends, if you think that I've gotten it wrong, the body has the right to move to change the chair's decision, but I'm doing the best I can. So if you see it differently, let me know. We turn now to resolution number 3.
That's Elizabeth right there.
Elizabeth Duffin at microphone 2, yes.
Thank you, Bishop. Elizabeth Duffin, clergy, Missouri City.
And DeAndre Johnson, clergy from Christ Church, Sugar Land.
And we rise to pull resolution 3.
All right. The makers of the resolution no longer wish to present it to the body, and they have the right to do that, and so we will not be considering resolution number 3.
Pension resolution. Pension resolution. What about resolution 4? Oh, it was already pulled. You can make mention of that.
I'm told that the assistant to the bishop to my right here has been informed that the makers of resolution number 4 have also withdrawn that, so that it is not up for consideration either. I now call on David Horton to make a presentation of the resolution that we saw yesterday as by suspension of the rules. Reverend Horton, where are you? I still don't see him. If you would come to the platform, please.
Over here. You will find this resolution in your guidebook. It was uploaded when you suspended the rules yesterday, so it is under our resolutions tab in guidebook. I believe it will be up here on the screen as well.
I'd like to do a little, this is Greg Williams. As mentioned earlier, I'm the pension chair. I'd like to do a little intro.
Okay, if you're part of the group there and David's willing to let you lead, then go for it. Okay. Greg, thank you.
So when we started talking about and thinking about disaffiliation and how the impact on the pensions, we started talking to Westpath, got their guidance, and then there was obviously diverse opinions on this thing. And I and some others met with all different factions. And then we did a really unique and pretty cool thing. We actually got together and talked. We'll go through this. And the two big tenets we had when we started talking were, one is we wanted to make sure that the reserves that we have, everyone's covered, that the United Methodist Church and this Texas Annual Conference, everybody's covered. We're all good going forward. That was number one. And the second thing is that we wanted to provide a way for people who, if that's what they want to do to go in Christ in a different way, we wanted to provide them a way to do that with love and grace. Those were the two tenets. So I'm proud to put my name on this because when you look at the people who signed this thing, it's a very diverse group. We worked through this, and it's really pretty simple. And I'll let David, when we came to an agreement on doing this, I got on an airplane and went to Europe and just got back. And David and Jim Bass did the heavy lifting. And so I'll let David walk through the formula and how it's going to work. And if we have any questions or whatever, we'll go through it. But I'll let David walk you through how it's going to work.
Brothers and sisters of the annual conference, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is David Horton, and I'm proud to be one of the pastors at St. Luke's Methodist in Houston. I serve our Gethsemane campus. Someone asked one of our pastors at St. Luke's why we don't take more public stances on hot-button issues. Our pastor said, because we want to be a church for all people, where all people feel welcomed and included. This person then told our pastor, "Oh, so you're Switzerland. You're neutral. You don't want to take sides." And our pastor said, "No, we're not Switzerland. We're the Red Cross. We're not here to pick sides. We're here to make a difference. We're not here to back one side over another. We're here to save as many people as we can, no matter who they are, no matter which side they're on." Brothers and sisters, we bring this resolution in the spirit of the Red Cross. This resolution does not try to take a side. It tries to make a difference. It's not meant to be neutral. It's meant to be helpful. Helpful for any church of any theological leaning that wishes to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church according to the principles of the Texas Annual Conference. Friends, I want to be a part of a Red Cross church. I don't want to be a part of a progressive wing of the church. I don't want to be a part of a traditional wing of the church. I want to be a part of a church where our most progressive voices and our most traditional voices and every voice in between come together to profess Jesus Christ as Lord. I want to be a part of a church that actually comes together to heal the nations. That vision is only a myth if we let it be. I can't speak for all the signers of this resolution, but I'm staying United Methodist. But at the same time, I don't want you to feel held hostage. That's not love. This resolution does one thing and one thing only. For local churches who wish to disaffiliate, it credits the unfunded pension liability of the Texas Annual Conference with the pension reserves of the Texas Annual Conference and asks local churches to pay their fair share of that gap, the gap between the pension liability we all share and the pension reserves we all share. We can all agree that we need to protect our retirees and fulfill our pension obligations to our clergy. And we can all agree that our churches have shared ownership of the reserves to which we all contributed. And therefore, this resolution will calculate a local church's unfunded pension liability based on their fair share of that gap between the liability we all share and the reserves we all share. Now, why do this? Because it's fair. This is a fair process that protects both our retirees and our active clergy, and allows local churches who wish to disaffiliate from the UMC to benefit from the reserves to which they gave. In closing, brothers and sisters, I don't know what the future holds for us people called United Methodist, but I do know what kind of church I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of a Red Cross church. I want to be a part of a church that passes a resolution like this. Thank you.
This resolution is before you. It has signers' names at the bottom, but also was considered by the Council on Finance and Administration, the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Pensions in a meeting last week, and approved unanimously by all three of those groups. The resolution is before you for consideration. Do you wish to speak to it? Microphone number 1.
Yeah, T.J. Gableman, Russ First United Methodist, pastor, elder. I just had a question. What does this resolution change compared to what was already being done? And the gap, what's different? I guess what's different than what's already been done for other churches that have disaffiliated?
Are you good for that, Greg? Or?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. If I can't answer it, I'll get Mark or Carol to answer it. But, I mean, the churches, my understanding, the churches that have left before they paid 100% of their unfunded liability. What this does is, and one of the things that was probably a learning for a lot of people when we started doing this is that the reserve number doesn't go down. The liability for the unfunded portion is held at the conference. So when people leave, money actually comes in to the reserve. So the reserve actually goes up. It doesn't go down. So that's number one. So, yeah, I think in the past people paid 100%, but God has blessed us in our reserves beyond belief. We've made a lot of money. We've been very blessed. So, as David said, this is a way to share that blessing in a way that says, okay, we still have enough money to cover us. And, oh, by the way, we can let people leave with a little love and grace without paying 100%. And that's what this accomplishes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess another clarification would be, so if other churches had to pay the 100% and some churches don't, do the churches that have already had to pay get some sort of a refund for that? Or
actually,
I was just asking because I know we're talking about fairness, and
No, it's a great question. Actually, Carol and I talked about this earlier, and she can speak to it. I think the answer is those churches could absolutely be refunded and be under the same protocol so that it's fair.
Thank you.
I see nobody moving to a microphone. I take it I'm sorry, okay. Here comes somebody. Microphone number 2.
Bishop Jones, Burt Palmer, Kingwood. Gary, also, I'm in speech 4 and a point of clarification that we also talked to CFNA in conversations about that number being recalculated so that it's on a quarterly basis. Would you speak to that so the body can be clear that number may increase or decrease based on the value of the reserve versus the value of obligation and liability at the point?
Yeah,
Yeah, Mark Hellum.
Mark Hellum.
Here comes the expert.
I just want to make a note. Mark Hellum does amazing work. Mark, I did that so that you could speak and people could say thank you for your work.
So I'm going to step back and let Mark talk.
That's correct. We're going to work with Westpath to get the valuation updated on a quarterly basis. The last number we received was as of May 1st. We'll be seeking an update as of July 1st, and then followed again as of October 1st, and then once again January 1st. So when a church disaffiliates, we'll be using the latest measurement available, which is going to be updated every 3 months. Okay. The last number we received from them had the liability, the unfunded liability, at $45 million. Okay, so what this resolution proposes is taking the pension assets as of May 1st, which are $42 million, offsetting that $45 million liability to come up with a $3 million difference that a ratio would be applied against to determine what each exiting church would pay. Okay.
I'm getting ready to call for a vote by show of hands. I don't want to rush the body, but it appears to me that you're ready to vote. This resolution was properly before you and has been in your hands now for more than 24 hours. If you will support this resolution, would you lift the hand? Down. If you're opposed, same sign. And it's done. Thank you very much. We appreciate this group of people working this out. Friends, a year ago we formed a task force, a future discernment task force, and by your action, Kip Giltz has been chairing it, and they have a report that is ready to be presented to you all. I'm looking for the page number, Kip, but I guess you'll call our attention. Page 53 in your pre-conference journal. Kip?
Thank you, Bishop. I stand before you as a convener of the Future Discernment Task Force. Our report is on pages 53 through 56 of the pre-conference journal. We were called into existence at the 2021 session of the Texas Annual Conference through a resolution with the catchy title, Resolution Regarding Alignment Decisions to be Made by the Texas Annual Conference. This resolution sought to bring a diverse team of lay and clergy leaders of our conference together to gather and present information related to the General Conference, scheduled to be held on August 29th through September 6th of this year. We were instructed to present it at in-person district gatherings to inform members of the upcoming legislation being considered at this General Conference and the denominational options that could be lifted up at the General Conference. We divided our task force into sub-teams to develop the library for these presentations and to serve as resources that would be available beyond the gatherings. We had a great plan. We did embrace 3 guiding principles for our work and our life together. They were and are to model in our sub-teams and in the task force a spirit of mutual respect and Christ-centered reverence that sets the tone for how we approach important decisions facing the Texas Annual Conference. To develop a library of resources to which we can direct our lay and clergy delegates of the Texas Annual Conference. And for 6 sub-teams to work together to present in each of our districts, allowing for question and answers afterwards, a method that would be fair, accurate, and balanced, educational and focus, and not advocacy. Then there would be a second round of district visits by the Future Discernment Task Force to take place after General Conference to present what was decided at General Conference and what impact that has on us as an annual conference and the impact on our local congregations. However, on March 3rd, 2022, the Commission on General Conference announced that a General Conference would not happen this year, citing the ongoing global pandemic, lagging vaccinations, backlogged visas, as reasons for the decision that the next General Conference will be held in 2024. Resolutions were submitted to the Texas Annual Conference seeking a called session of the Texas Annual Conference to consider disaffiliating as an annual conference from the United Methodist Church. Well, since this action seemed quite similar to the action being proposed through General Conference legislation, the Future Discernment Task Force included a motion in our report there on pages 53 through 56, asking the Texas Annual Conference for permission to host district meetings to provide information and field questions related to disaffiliating as an annual conference. The motion is included in the pre-conference journal. It was discussed at our pre-conference meetings on May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And then on May 10th, 2022, the Judicial Council released its decision 1444 that declared an annual conference could not consider disaffiliating as an annual conference until the General Conference meets to outline such a process. So that motion is no longer relevant. However, the Future Discernment Task Force is aware that district gatherings are being organized to talk about the pathway for disaffiliation for churches wishing to disaffiliate from the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. The Future Discernment Task Force believes that we were formed to address similar issues, that there's a need for consistent information, a broad resource of people for the conversations and the questions that emerge. So the Future Discernment Task Force presents now a new motion to you that was reviewed and adopted at our motion of the 2022 session of the Texas Annual Conference by a vote of 21-3. This motion is a motion to adapt our work in light of current discernments. We're great on catchy titles. The Future Discernment Task Force plans to continue this work of distilling the information available and presenting it to the conference. This work would continue in the spirit of the resolution that established the task force and will seek to educate the clergy and congregations on matters related to the disaffiliation discernments. These matters include, but are not limited to, principles regarding local church requests for disaffiliation, the options available for clergy and congregations, the effects of disaffiliation on pension and health benefits. Included in this report, then, is a motion for the Future Discernment Task Force to lead meetings in each district prior to any called session of the Texas Annual Conference that would consider disaffiliation by local congregations of the Texas Annual Conference from the United Methodist Church. While the intent of the Future Discernment Task Force was to provide education prior to General Conference, the delay of General Conference has changed the landscape in many ways, and information and education are critical for such a time. Much of the research and conversation has already been undertaken by the Future Discernment Task Force. This motion seeks to adapt their role. These meetings will provide an opportunity for clergy and laity to hear varying viewpoints, including whether to remain a part of the United Methodist Church or to consider realignment with a different expression of the Wesleyan movement. Issues related to disaffiliation, including financial implications, clergy orders, congregational organization, and identity, would be presented at these district meetings. Bishop, if it is in order, we move the adoption of this motion from the Future Discernment Task Force of the Texas Annual Conference.
It's in order and is properly before you. As he indicated, the report has several pages, but the motion that is being considered is on page 56. Is anybody wishing to speak to it? Microphone number 1.
Bishop, thank you. Jason Burnham, Covenant, the Woodlands Clergy. I move to amend the motion that is on the floor, if that is in order.
It is. What's your motion?
The motion as amended would read, quote, is a motion for the Future Discernment Task Force to prepare consistent materials and call meetings where Bishop Jones presides and presents the conference principles of disaffiliation. A conference financial officer presents all relevant financial implications of disaffiliation, and representatives chosen by the principal affiliation options present their vision of the future denominations. In each district, at least 60 days prior to the fall 2022 called session of the Texas Annual Conference, that will consider disaffiliation by local congregations of the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church.
Is there a second? Second. Jason, I'm not clear. Is this a substitute for the entire motion on page 56 or an addition to it?
The vast majority of it is an addition.
Okay. What parts of the motion on page 56 are you striking?
The word could in the final sentence now says will. One second.
I'm not seeing the word could.
The word would is now the word will.
This work will continue in the spirit of the resolution that established the task force and will seek to educate the clergy and congregations on matters related to disaffiliation discernments. And then your section comes to, and then everything you just read adds to that, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You may speak to it.
I deeply agree with the desire for education and information across the conference. I rise to offer this amendment for 3 reasons. First, the original motion contains an ambiguous presentation structure. By specifying the means by which consistent materials will be prepared and clarifying the leadership from our bishop and financial officers, we can feel confident that each district will be blessed with the information necessary to journey through this season faithfully. Second, the original motion does not leave room for discernment. The original has called for district meetings prior to the called session of the annual conference this fall, failing to leave dedicated room for congregations to have sufficient time for discernment if they choose to enter a process of disaffiliation. This amendment directs these meetings to take place 60 days prior to that called session, affording congregations the time they need. Third, the original motion diminishes the benefit of authenticity. As I have talked to laity across this annual conference this week, I've consistently heard rave reviews from Monday's laity panel session. Thank you, John Esquivel, for offering this. Thank you, presenters, who beautifully articulated your convictions and hopes. Now imagine Congresswoman Ann Johnson presenting for the newly forming Global Methodist Church, or Jessica Lagrone advocating for the continuing UMC. That is what I wish to avoid. This amendment allows us to reflect the wisdom from the laity session in every district across our conference. So I urge each member of this conference to support this amendment and bless each congregation in each district with vital information.
This amendment is properly before you. Microphone number 2.
Trey Comstock, clergy, Palestine Grace. I'd like to speak against this amendment.
Okay.
1,000 years ago, about 12 months ago, we as a body established the Future Discernment Task Force to do exactly this task. That is the task of the task force, is to prepare these presentations so that we can properly discern our future. Why would we now, as they come before us to present how they wish to perform the task of the task force, strip the task from the task force that we voted on with huge, almost unanimity, to form it, to task it, and to establish a diverse ideological team to present this exact information across our annual conference. I think this amendment goes wildly against the spirit that we had 12 months ago and the spirit that we seek to have, that we are a body that believes that, yes, our bishop has an incredibly important leadership role, but that we need to hear a lot of voices in this task. And so let us trust the task force that we ourselves created to do this exact task. Don't take the task from the task force.
Microphone number 1.
Thanks, Bishop. Marquise Hobbs, clergy, Faith UMC. My grandmother used to have a saying. It was, I want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. It's proverbial wisdom, which means I want to hear it from the source. And in this day and age, we all are very familiar with misinformation, disinformation, as well as, dare I say, the hot button topic, fake news. I think what this does is not to address disinformation, which is the willful intent of communicating in a way of ill will. Instead, I think this amendment encourages us to protect ourselves from misinformation and having someone, not desiring to provide information that's incorrect, but doing it in a way that they didn't even intend to. So by us having representatives from the various places that these reports come from to be at the table, to engage in organic conversations, I think will help us. Because the question that's before us and the thing that we're going to be wrestling with is of gravity. It has weight. It will impact a lot of people. And we don't need to just send someone to represent everybody. We need everybody who has an important role or an important office to represent themselves at the table, to engage in these conversations at a district level. So I ask that we vote for this amendment to bring more clarity to what we're asking the task force to do so that we can protect ourselves not against disinformation, but misinformation. Thank you.
Microphone number 2.
Jeff Powers, clergy, Christ Church United Methodist, The Woodlands. I stand to speak in favor of the amendment. The task force original purpose was to respond to the session of General Conference that we were anticipating. The General Conference will not be held. Therefore, the task force has literally lost its purpose. This amendment gives it purpose and utility for the Texas Annual Conference. I vote in support its adoption. We've had 3 speeches for and 1 against. I'm looking for a speech against.
Yes, microphone number 2.
Don House, A&M Methodist Church, I'm lay, and I'm speaking against the amendment.
Go
I'm
ahead.
a member of the task force, and I too was concerned about the role of the task force being an advocacy group. But the way the membership of that task force, and I know it wasn't shown in total, every possible position on these issues is represented. And in the long conversations we've had, we were checking each other to where the import of what we're trying to do is not an advocacy position. It was being self-policed. I was concerned at first. That this would be a group in which there would be an advocacy speech given in one district and another one in another district. But as we work together, we recognize that's not what we want to do. We don't want to have a debate inside ourselves and then whoever won that debate, that's what was being presented. We really wanted a balanced approach. I gave a Sunday school lesson not long ago to our Sunday school class on disaffiliation, and I prepared a presentation that should take maybe 40 minutes. And after I started hearing the questions, it went on for 3 hours and then another 2 hours to finish it up. And what I was amazed at is the questions that were coming. We were not expecting the questions that we got. But we wanted to be as objective as we could. So what we thought we might do as a group is not be an advocate on one side or another, differing across the districts, but given both sides, not unlike what we did in the laity session, to where people can hear both sides, the positives and the negatives of every particular issue there. And we do not want to be an advocate here. What we want to do is get people informed and to address the questions that they have, not just the ones we think they need to hear. And that's the purpose of it. And I hope you'll trust us.
I'm looking for another speech against microphone number 1.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Okay.
My name is Betty Owens-Geary. I'm a lay delegate from St. Luke's in Houston. And I am really confused about what it is we're voting on, both the resolution and the amendment. As I understand it, the resolution that this amendment is supposed to amend is on page 56 of the pre-conference journal at the end of the report of this future discernment task force. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the motion that the task force brought. And there's now an amendment from Jason Burnham to give more direction to how these district meetings are going to be held.
Okay, so but the resolution that the amendment will amend says that the task force will have meetings in each district prior to any annual conference called session that would consider disaffiliation of the conference, which isn't going to happen at least until after the next general conference. So what is it that the task force is supposed to do that the amendment's now amending?
Kip, as the maker of the facilitator, would you please address that question?
Yes, in my report, the oral report that I gave, I mentioned that the May 10th decision, 1444, made such a special session of annual conference untenable. And so the motion from the Future Discernment Task Force was revised to address the special session of annual conference considering local church disaffiliations that are happening in the district. That's what I presented in the oral report.
Okay, but we don't have that written down anywhere.
Yes, that should be in our guidebook. I'll make sure it gets in there. Thank you.
But it's not at the moment.
That's correct.
Okay. So I don't think anybody has, what I'm concerned about is I don't think anybody has written down something they can look at and say, this is what I'm voting on with this amendment to go with it.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
I'm looking for a speech against the amendment. Microphone
Bishop,
number 1.
I have a motion.
Okay.
Kate Walker, Grace in the Heights, Houston, clergy. I move that we lay this on the table until that text can be provided to the body and that we be allowed to pick it up later in our meeting time when everyone's had a chance to review the changes that are being offered.
That seems to be a reasonable request. That's in order. It would be considered tomorrow morning, and both the revised motion from the Future Discernment Task Force and the Burnham Amendment would be put in the guidebook this evening. That's your intention, I think, so that we would consider it before adjournment tomorrow. That's a motion to have the body schedule consideration at a specific time. It's in order. Is there a second? Does anybody wish to speak to this motion to postpone consideration till tomorrow? I'm going to put it to you as a vote. If you would raise the hand, if you would support this motion to schedule consideration for tomorrow morning, would you raise the hand? Down. If you're opposed, raise the hand. And it carries. So we will quit consideration of it at the moment and move to that. Friends, we are really close. Oh, Mary Lou!
Hello.
So, anybody need a little levity? Oh, what happened to my squirrel?
This is a new one.
Oh, a new squirrel. Okay, all righty. Okay, so I decided that today I would do just a tiny little thing. About a year ago, but not quite, Scott got put in the hospital. And some of you know that because I was desperate and sent out texts to everybody I knew that prayed. And so, you know, prayer warriors all over the country were praying because Scott had a little incident. We were in Kansas. We flew to Houston, went to the hospital. And here we are in the hospital. And I have to tell you all that I'm just so thankful that he's here and up and going, and, you know, his brain is working fine. But that first night, I have to tell you, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up, we were in the hospital room, and an intern, or a resident, was over there just working and working and working on him. And I was like, I finally said, "What are you looking for?" And the intern turned around really slowly, and he said, "A pulse." I'm telling you, that took me back a bit. Just a bit. And he said, you know, his right hand looks okay. Scott, can we see your right hand?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. It's red. You know, it works. He can do things with it. But they couldn't find a pulse in his right wrist. Well, they still can't find a pulse in his right wrist. I'm here to tell you, every doctor that we've said that to says, "Really?" and goes over there and tries to find the pulse. So, no, he doesn't have a pulse in his right wrist. You know, he lost like 10 inches of artery, but I was so worried when they were doing the surgery to pull out the blood clot in his arm because nobody told me that a blood clot in your arm can't go to your lungs or your head. Had I known that, I wouldn't have been quite so desperate with all those prayer warrior prayers because I was really worried about his head. I'm not sure I cared about his right arm. But, I mean, at that moment, I really didn't. I already knew he didn't have a pulse in it. So I didn't. I didn't know that, but I later learned that. And we went. He got out of the hospital. He was doing fine. He can work his arm. Yes, sometimes it hurt. You know, what happened was we thought he had tendonitis for, 8 weeks. No, he was growing a 10-inch blood clot in his arm. Okay, fine. But then we have the surgeon that is the vascular guy. And what I'm worried about is the sword of Damocles coming down on him. And no, that, we were told that wasn't going to happen. So, and this doctor, when we went back in 8 or 10 weeks later, and he'd seemed okay in that time, but we go back into the doctor's office, and the doctor, but during that time, I have to tell you, that 8 to 10 weeks, I was worried, sick about him. And so, I was following him around and trying to get him not to do things and trying to get him to, and he was getting really irritated with me. But I was, I was so concerned. But this doctor says to him, well, I think you can begin to resume normal activities. To which I said, okay, well, kind of slowly, right? Scott did not hear that doctor say that. Do you want to know what he heard him say? Free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. So that's the way he determined to go from then on. And, riding his bike and doing all this stuff and, fine. And then we go back to the doctor this spring, and the doctor says, yeah, it's been long enough. I think you can go back to all your normal activities. One of the things he likes to do is water ski. And it takes a lot of effort to get him out of the water on one ski because he's a big boy. And I said, well, can he water ski? And the doctor, like any good doctor would do at that moment, said, well, could he water ski before? Well, yes, he could. And I don't know, do we have the video? There he is, guys, there he is.
Free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last.
And he's going to go this summer.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Friends, we're coming to the end of our afternoon session. I'm going to turn to Kip for any last words. We will meet back in this room at 7 o'clock for our service of ordination. So,
yeah.
Oh, microphone 2, yes?
Hi, I'm Mark Lee Rogers, clergy for Clear Lake UMC. I had a point of information or a request for clarity. To my hearing, Reverend Walker's motion was to table consideration on the amendment to the resolution, but it seems like we voted on just postponing it till tomorrow.
She was the intention of her resolution, Kate, I assume I'm hearing you right. If not, go to the microphone, was to postpone consideration of both the resolution from the task force and the amendment until there could be clarity. And I suggested with her that about the text that we would have that posted in the guidebook tonight and available for consideration tomorrow, and she agreed to that.
Okay.
Once again, if you don't like the way I'm ruling, you can always appeal me and get the body to vote my majority to change my decision. Okay, Kip?
Bishop, I thought we'd do one more poll. If you take out your devices...
No. No.
Okay, let me put it this way then. There are 7 of you with devices that you have not turned in. Those are no good to you anymore. Unless, of course, you choose to purchase that, and that is available to you. We do have your names. We know who checked them out. So please do us a favor and turn those back in. We are having clergy pictures made this year. That is through Remember Me in room 333. Remember Me in room 333. Clergy, let me just say, when the cabinet gets together, occasionally your name is mentioned. And when they do, the cabinet, who may not be familiar with you, they have 2 options. One is to look in the pictorial directory. Oh yeah, I know who that is. The other is to depend on your district superintendent to describe you. remember me in room 333. You don't need an appointment. Just show up. It'll be fine. Class of 2020 licensing school. I think this is still applicable, is it, Jan? Is it? Jan's not even there. You were invited to come over here by where Robin is. Can you wave, Robin? There you go. And because you've never met in person, you went through licensing school on Zoom. You can either show up over here or let somebody describe what you look like now. So go ahead and come here to the stage. You'll notice over there by where Bishop Jones just walked, we have a new person sitting next to Russell. We will introduce Trey Burns tomorrow when we deal with the nominations report. So don't pay any attention to him yet. Bishop, I think those are all the announcements I have right now.
Let's pray. God, we're grateful for this time of discernment, for the life we have together as a conference. We pray your blessing upon all of us as we go to our meals, but also as we prepare for a high and holy moment tonight of ordination, commissioning, and recognition. Watch over us and guide us in Jesus' name. Amen. We're in recess.
Ordination at 7.